Welcome to Pensar Basketball Live. Today we're going to talk about, are the Toronto Raptors back? We saw a very encouraging sign of what may be to come last season. There were spurts, but there was a lot of issues last year. Last night, it was preseason, but it was against the champs, and the Toronto Raptors looked fantastic. A lot of young players look fantastic. Say what you will about where the Raptors will end up this year. I do believe one thing is for sure. The young players are in good hands, and that is more than I could have said 2 years ago. We're going to talk about what Darko Rajakovic is doing for young players, not only Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, and RJ Barrett, and Grady Dick, who have notably improved, but also for guys like Jakob Pertl, Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk. Is he helping some of these older guys improve elements of their game, segments of their game because of their focus? One thing I really appreciate about Darko Rajakovic, he doesn't think you're a finished product until you retire. This is a guy who's probably sitting there with Garrett Temple trying to figure out how he can become a more effective leader and trying to grow him as a coach. There are people like this in this world that just believe there's limitless potential and they see the best in you and they have this beautiful way of approaching how to develop you. And we heard so many tales of Darko throughout the years with San Antonio, Memphis, OKC, that he is effectively this type of leader in your locker room. He is this type of person who can connect with players and get them to really understand how he's trying to help them grow. And I think that that development is on display, of course, with the top end of the player, top end players, even with some of the role players. But there were a couple of players that I thought even Darko can't help. Ochai Agbaji and Davion Mitchell. Have I been wrong about Ochai and Davion? I got to tell you, today I listened to Davion Mitchell and I found myself feeling so embarrassed because, here's the thing. Anchoring biases are real. We've talked about other people's anchoring biases. Let's talk about my anchoring bias. I have an anchoring bias that Davion Mitchell was an overrated prospect, and I did not like him in Sacramento. I was very against the pick when they picked him ninth, but just because he wasn't good at ninth doesn't mean he can't be a really good NBA player. And the minute the Raptors took him, I kind of saw him as an afterthought of that trade. I never thought in a million years that I could eventually be looking at my backup point guard. Now, full disclosure, of course, I am higher on Jamal Shed going forward. But that doesn't mean that I haven't seen some stuff from Davion in the last two games that's making me think, could this really work out? Could the Raptors have really found something in Davion Mitchell? I'm not selling myself because it's preseason. I'm listening to the guy talk in today's presser, and I am amazed with his self-awareness, his humility, his leadership, what he could mean for Jacoby Walter. For those who don't know, Jacoby Walter, when he was asked why he chose Baylor, he said because of Davion Mitchell. Who better to communicate with him? And Jamal Shed, when he was asked, about the influence of Davion Mitchell, you hear him saying, that was my comparison. I'm looking at him for guidance. Is Davion Mitchell potentially low-key going to become a leader for this team? Could that be a great thing? Especially if he's not gunning for, stats and stuff, which has never really been the type of player he is, right? He addressed his off-ball defense today, and I really liked what he said. So we're going to listen to that interview. We're also going to talk about ESPN's top 100. Plenty of Raptors, RJ, Scottie, Emmanuel Quickly. Were they fairly rated, or did they unfortunately have to pay the Canada tax? Also, a lot of ex-Raptors. I'm positive Fred VanVleet's on that list. Pascal Siakam's on that list. OG Anunoby's on that list. I'm not losing my mind. Last year, were we having debates about whether Pascal Siakam was a better player than Scottie Barnes? I swear I was screaming that Scottie clears, Scottie clears, Scottie clears. But I had a lot of people here telling me I was being presumptuous. Well, it's not presumptuous anymore. ESPN clearly has listed Scottie Barnes above Pascal Siakam. But guess what? I don't think he's high enough. ESPN has him rated, and we'll get into where ESPN has him rated, but I don't agree with it. And today I got on the panel, and last night, there was a very big we had 700 people in the live. Congratulations and thank you to all of you who showed up and celebrated Pensari Basketball's 3-year anniversary with us and celebrated a huge Raptor win. But I told y'all that I was going to go on the panel today and really talk my shit about Scottie Barnes and why I think he's going to be all NBA. Take just a quick listen to those who didn't catch the panel today. This is what I said. Whoops. Let me pull that off. Let me pull that back on. Technical difficulties. Give me one sec here. Here we go.
Nearly top 15. Oh, Scottie
The
Barnes.
best team in the North, or the best player on the best team in the North, Scottie Barnes.
Second team.
What?
I know y'all not gonna support me, but he's going second team All NBA. Watch it happen.
I don't see no room for the young fella right now.
I think he's an outright all-star this year. I will say that.
He's super dope, but I don't think there's enough room for the young fella on the All NBA teams this year. I don't think he's gonna make
consider
it.
consider that consider he's eligible for the Supermax. Consider that they did the same thing with Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Halliburton. They like voting these guys in when they've got that Supermax in the thing.
Yeah.
So they might just do it, and if he makes the cutoff, he's a box score stuffer. I went on for 5 minutes and tried to explain to these Americans why Scottie Barnes was going to prove a lot of people wrong, and I'm firm. I think if the Raptors surprise, Scottie Barnes is going to make All NBA with the contract in the balance, and I'm pushing for it. So look, the media narrative, that we have pushed was Scottie for Rookie of the Year. He got it. Second year, we pushed back against the slander. In the third year, we pushed for All-Star. The fourth year, we're pushing for All NBA. Next year, I'm going to clue you in right now. I'm starting the MVP campaign very early next year. So that's where I'm at with Scottie Barnes, but that's not where ESPN is with Scottie Barnes. So we'll definitely look at the ESPN stuff. First, I want to take a look at what Davion Mitchell, Scottie Barnes, and Darko Rajakovic had to say today during the Raptors press availability. And I think there were some incredible conversations, and I really love how Davion spoke. Just to give a brief, foray into just how I feel about this team. Look, this is preseason. The Raptors have had highs and lows in the preseason. It's been very hard to evaluate without the proper pieces in place, but the offense makes sense. Now, yesterday we did a film breakdown during the live, which I clipped into an individual clip this morning, which we uploaded. RJ and Scottie and Emmanuel Quickley. Can these three players drive efficient offense to the extent that your role players can be role players? Which is to say that Bruce Brown and all his, cutting and all that stuff that we saw on full display in Denver, Ochai Agbaji and all the beautiful stuff we've seen during the preseason, Davion Mitchell and his pressure point of attack defense and his pesky, somewhat underrated passing and reasonable shooting. Can we get a Jonathan Mobo shout out? These role players, Kelly Olynyk, a spacing center for Scottie. Wow, what a dream that was a couple of years ago when we were, seeing Khem Birch out there. Could a Kelly Olynyk be unlocked? Look, the offense is going to start with advantage generation, and then it's going to ping pong, and it's going to go down the line. Okay, so your finishers and your advantage creators, your advantage creator is going to create opportunities for advantage extension, which is going to create opening lanes. But the opening lanes just can't start if your advantage generators can't generate advantages. I believe that Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett can generate a lot of advantages. Now, there are 450 players in the NBA. ESPN thinks that you, Toronto Raptor fans, have 3 of the top 66. Do the math. How many teams have 3 top 66 players? So really the only gap here is how good those 3 players really are. So maybe they have Emmanuel Quickley in the 60s. Can Emmanuel Quickley rise to the 50s? Maybe they have RJ Barrett in the 50s. Can he maintain? Can he become a slightly better defender? Maybe they have Scottie Barnes in the 30s. Could he rise to the 20s? Damn. If you believe me, he's rising to the teens. Suddenly you see the framework for massively outperforming. And I've been on this for 4 months now. So this is nothing new for you, and I'm not going to repeat myself. But it is these other pieces that were so concerning going into this season, right? What do you make of a non-offensive player like an Ochai Agbaji, a guy who is a negative spacer? He's hitting the side of the backboard. He's missing threes in summer league. Oh, so discouraged. I was so discouraged with Ochai Agbaji in summer league. But honestly, we're evaluating makes and misses, and the process with Ochai has been so different. He's trying to perfect himself into a role player. I think he's lost any illusions, if he had any, of being a star in the NBA. But can you be a star in your role? Because that's really what Drew Holiday is. That's what Derek White is. These guys are stars in their role. Is Al Horford going out there dropping 30 points? No, he's a star in his role. Peyton Pritchard is a star in his role. So can Ochai Agbaji be a star in his role? Can he be a guy who can shoot 34, 35% from 3, cut to the basket, protect the rim like this? I think he's bought into that, and I think he's shown some very promising flashes so far. If he's like the 11th guy that I'm highest on this team, that's looking very good. Because the 11th guy I was highest on like a year ago was like Delano Banton, Malachi Flynn, Jeff Doughton territory. And Ochai, for all I say, I love Jeff Doughton, but Ochai is like a very different level of athlete. He's attacking early in transition. He has a role. He has a role in the NBA. His positional versatility is very underrated. I'm seeing something with him. Davion Mitchell, who we will hear from momentarily. I am really impressed with how quickly he's growing on me as a leader, as a person. I really like the stuff I'm hearing from him. And the most impressive thing, and we'll hear from him in a second, was how aware he is of what he needs to do and what his role is. I don't hear any illusions of him coming and saying, well, it's either me or Emmanuel Quickly. He's fully understood Emmanuel Quickly is the starting point guard. My role will go down when he's back. And I love that. I love the fact that he's taking on this leadership position with all the young kids. I love that he's having an impact on Jacoby. The underrated part is that when one guy tries so hard on defense, like his point of attack is really pressure and his physicality, they set the tone for everybody else. It's really hard to be sloppy and lackadaisical on defense when you got Davion Mitchell picking up full court. And I've always believed that point guards and centers set the tone for your defense. Well, it's yet to be seen what kind of step Emmanuel Quickly is going to take defensively. But Yak, Scottie, Davion setting the tone for your defense. Okay, we're seeing the tones of maybe a really competent defense. Maybe not a top 5 defense, top 10 defense. Could we be a top 15 defense? Is that crazy? I don't think so. There were 2 reasons that I was a little bit low on the Raptors coming into this season. And by low, I mean high. High relative to most people, but lower than I'd like to be. And that was partially their defense, because I was worried with Emmanuel Quickly, Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, especially. How are you going to hold water defensively? Well, it's worth noting RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly have played very big roles defensively for Tom Thibodeau. You don't play for Tom Thibodeau if you don't play defense. And they certainly weren't worse than Jalen Brunson as a defender, I'll tell you that. So I think it's just worth noting that there's a scheme that these guys can fit into if you have enough around them. And I think Scottie, Yak, Kelly Olynyk has caught a lot of strays this offseason for his lack of paint protection, but I think he's also another guy who's fit into some incredible defensive schemes. I watched Kelly play back in the second unit next to Walker Kessler, and I thought he was incredible. Does Kelly Olynyk plus Jakob Poeltl equal a pretty decent lineup? Sure. I still think the Raptors have that hole, at the backup big spot, and I'm not sure Bruno Fernando plugs it, but I'm feeling overall much more comfortable with their depth right now than I did a week ago. We haven't even seen Bruce Brown. Allegedly, the last time we saw Bruce Brown, he was having an off year because of injuries, because his knee was bothering him. What if his knee is not bothering him in a contract year? Is Bruce Brown ready to come out and be a really good player off the bench? He certainly was for an NBA champion. You're telling me he can't be for the allegedly 11th worst team in the East? Certainly he could be. There's a weird upside on this team, and it's very exciting. And regardless of whether they win a lot of games or lose a lot of games, it's going to be really fun to watch. Another thing that I have noticed, especially yesterday, but also in spurts in other games, was Grady is a mixed bag on defense, but he's not a non-defender. The rebounding helps. Some of the transition stuff helps. His communication and basketball IQ in general helps. We saw the dig on Jaylen Brown yesterday. I thought that was very impressive. There's some tipped passes in the passing lane. Can you just communicate? Is he a worse defender than Gary Trent Jr.? Be honest with yourselves. No, he's not. He's bigger. He's a better rebounder. He's a lot smarter off the ball. So again, you might not be a great defense in your starting lineup, but if Scottie and Yak really, really push up and Emmanuel Quickly takes a step, you can hold water as a middle of the pack defense. And now the offense, we've already talked about the offensive process of this team, but some of the pieces are really blossoming. And if you talk to most insiders and people around the league, the player that they're expecting the biggest jump from on the Raptors is not RJ, is not Scottie, but is rather Emmanuel Quickly. Kevin O'Connor had an entire blurb about how he thinks Emmanuel Quickly could be one of the most improved players in the league, that he could be a front runner or even a dark horse to win the most improved player award. From everything we've heard, Emmanuel Quickly has been in the gym all offseason. He's working on those threes. And if Darko's track record of development is any indication, I think Emmanuel quickly could come out and average 24 points per game on really good efficiency. With elevated passing, with better defense, could Emmanuel quickly absolutely push himself into a completely different tier of player than he's currently at right now? Could Emmanuel quickly be, could it be a conversation? Like, I mean, here's something absurd that I'm going to say that maybe a lot of people won't agree with. Would it be absurd in a year that we're talking about Emmanuel quickly, Pascal Siakam, who's better? Could it be absurd to say in a year that we could be putting Emmanuel quickly in the same conversations as who's in that tier of point guards? Not Trae Young, not Damian Lillard, a LaMelo Ball. Could he be in that conversation with a LaMelo Ball? It seems absurd right now. LaMelo's a hell of a lot more talented, but I trust hard work. And you know why I trust hard work? Because I've seen Scottie do it. I've seen Shea do it. You know, today on the panel, we were talking about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and how much better he looks this year. And I'm like, my God, you can set a clock to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander coming back every single year being better. I feel that way about Emmanuel quickly as well, man. Manny Quick, as he was known in high school, is a worker. He's a grinder, and he sets great tone for your team. Overall, the culture of this team is shifted. It's changed, and it's all about development. I was thinking a lot about how Nick Nurse used to motivate guys, you know, get the contract, get the upheaval in your role. You know, I remember Nick Nurse, there was this entire conversation that we had about, oh, wow. Oh, wow. I might have just set up an interview with an ex-Raptor. That would be so cool. I love this dude. Okay, I hope that happens. Sorry, I just got a DM while I was on a live stream. Pray to God I didn't just jinx myself, but that seemed positive. Okay. I've lost my train of thought because I'm really excited about this. Isaac Turner saying congrats. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I really hope it happens. Okay. Man. I have always, can someone please help me understand where the hell I was? Right. Team culture. Team culture of development. This idea of motivating players. How do you motivate a player? Nick Nurse would say, you motivate a player by offering them the carrot. So you say, you're an $18 million guy. How do we get you to a $36 million contract? You're third team All NBA. How do we get you to first team All NBA? You're not an all-star. How do we get you to all-star? You're a first team, you're a second team All NBA. How do we get you to MVP? That dangling of the carrot is very zero sum. You understand what I'm saying? Because if someone is an all-star on your team, that probably means someone else is not an all-star on your team. And I'm not saying that individual goals can't be a part of your calculus, but I love so much what Scottie Barnes said in today's interview about Jason Tatum winning a championship. And he said the Boston Celtics win a championship. That's just who he is. And you have rerouted this entire team culture and you have the perfect star player and coach to build this selfless identity. You know how he's motivating Davion Mitchell? I'm going to make you a better player. Are you in or are you out? He's not motivating him with let's get you paid $20 million next year, Davion Mitchell, because sure, that's one way to motivate a person. But I love the idea, you know, throughout my life. Now, I'm not an NBA player. I get it. I'm not a high level athlete. I get it. I played a little bit of sports. But I always appreciated those coaches who would say, I want to make you the best player you can be. I want to make you a sharper player. I want to teach you the game a little bit. That got me interested. But there were some guys who could only get interested with, I'm going to get a scout to watch you. And that kind of comes down to how you motivate, right? But in the end, how you motivate matters to me. And it seems like Darko has motivated these players through, we are going to give you the resources to get better. RJ Barrett, we're going to make you a better playmaker. We're going to make your shot selection better. Are you in or are you out? Scottie Barnes, we're going to make you a better leader. We're going to make you a better leader. Are you in or are you out? Davion Mitchell, I know you're a great on-ball defender. We're going to make you a great off-ball defender. This is not about contracts, guys. The contracts will take care of itself. The contracts will take care of themselves. The Raptors have shown year after year after year, they take care of their own. It's not about that. Someone saying it's definitely Fred. Was it Jose Calderon? Nope. Way, way, way. What era X Raptors? Your era. Your era of X Raptors. Anyways, okay, let's just hope that happens. I'm not trying to jinx it. Okay. So in the end, what I'm saying is how you motivate players matters. It sets the tone for your culture. And you're not motivating RJ Barrett with let's make you an all-star. We're motivating him with let's make you the greatest player you can be. Let the all-stars, MVP votes, championships take care of themselves. That I think I alluded to it, in terms of the winning effect. How do you counteract the effect of losing basketball games? You win between the margins, you know? And if you want any evidence that what I'm saying is not bullshit and is actually how this team is thinking and how this team is functioning in terms of their inner spirit and mentality, take a look at how we as a fan base reacted, not we necessarily, but collectively Raptor fans, Raptor media, Raptors, people around this team reacted to the Raptors losing against the Boston Celtics, the Boston Celtics B squad, and take a look at how the team reacted to that same loss. Did you see hanging heads? No. Did you see them come out with a hangover? No. Did you see them all bummed out in the post game or hanging their head in the locker room? No. You saw them smiling and laughing and celebrating the teammates who went out there and competed. That is how you keep a positive culture. I'm not the most positive person. I've had to learn very much how to keep it light. I'm a pretty heavy person. Can you tell? Yeah. I'm learning a lot from how Darko Rajakovic is coaching this team. So culture has been shifted. It's beautiful. Every single coach who's ever been hired comes in with a plan of how he's going to change this and change that. And Darko didn't do that though. He did and he didn't. Hear me out. Hear me out on this. Every single coach wants to run his offense. Every single coach has an idea of who his starting point guard is going to be and how he's going to function. Every single coach has defensive principles on whether guards need to crash the glass or how many threes you want to take, etc. None of this matters. Every single coach in the NBA knows basketball. Every single one of them understand basketball at a pretty deep level. Some more so than others, but regardless, that's not important. There are plenty of coaches who have failed. Who am I thinking of? Boston. Rick Pitino. Great example. Brilliant coach. Could not connect with his players. One of my favorite Raptor coaches of all time, Kevin O'Neal. I loved him. That guy had me playing defense in that basketball clinic. I loved KO. I will always speak glowingly of KO. But players just couldn't quite get into him. It matters that you have the right idea, but if you have the right idea and no one's willing to listen to you, you don't have the right idea. So it really matters. David Blatt's another example. LeBron wasn't willing to buy into him. He didn't establish that connection. Maybe he felt he didn't have to because he was a EuroLeague legend. And LeBron said, EuroLeague my ass. I'm an NBA player. I'm the greatest player of all time in my mind. And I don't have to listen to you. And I'd rather win a championship for Ty Lue and boost his career instead of yours. Sure. In the end, none of what Darko is preaching about off-ball movement, cutting, selfless basketball would matter if Scottie's not in it. If Darko is, going to have a conversation, and I believe, knowing this media space, I haven't watched the entire presser. I'm pretty sure that they brought up, Scottie Barnes yelling at Darko Rajakovic because Will Lou brought it up in the Hello Welcome podcast yesterday. And obviously I brought it up. It's been brought up and I'm positive, people are going to talk about it. Although here's something funny. I've often accused Will Lou of being really negative about Scottie. Here's the funny thing. I was more negative about that interaction between Scottie and Darko than he was. He took the positive line. So, wow. Will Lou is more positive about Scottie Barnes' interaction with Darko Rajakovic last night than I was. I never thought I'd see the day, but I'm really happy about it. I'm very happy that this media space is changing their tune on my favorite player, and I love it. So, anyways, let's get to this media availability. I think we're gonna pause a little bit and really dissect some of the quotes, but I really love it. And then right after that, we will get into the top 100 and we'll break it all down. And If you would like to call in while we're doing that or right after, you can certainly do so.
How have you felt about your role so far with the Raptors?
I mean, I think me and the coaches had a couple conversations, trying to figure that out. Still played 3 games, so still trying to figure it out. I mean, all our players are not back yet, so right now my role is a little bit bigger, of course. Everyone's injured, but when Emmanuel come back and RJ and all of them people are coming back, I know my role is going to get a little smaller, but I'm still keep playing to the best of my abilities. Defensively, get my teammates open, what I've been doing in the preseason.
There were a couple of passes last night.
I really love that he's approaching it with this very holistically team first mentality. But I will say that your star player sets the tone. You will occasionally get a disruptive, teammate that is going to come in and try to challenge the status quo. But if Scottie is team first, and Emmanuel Quickly is team first, and RJ Barrett is team first, and Yak is team first, you don't get to come in and disrupt that. So everybody is going to walk the same line as your star player. With good teams are usually coached by the best players on the team. They're usually led by the best players on the team. And when your best players are setting the tone that they're going to be coachable, that they're going to be selfless, that stats are not going to be, the be all and end all all-star appearances are not going to be chased. Shout out to Fred VanVleet. I think if you're a rookie or you're a role player or you're a journeyman and you come into that culture, you have no choice but to buy in.
Brady, where it felt like you knew instinctually where he was going to be. Like that transition pass was crazy, but it was also the half court pass where you kind of skipped it over to him.
Yeah.
How do you build that? Like, how do you know that he's going to be in that certain spot, or he feels comfortable catching it in that certain spot?
I mean, I think Grady's just a really smart player. He knows his spots on the court. I really don't know much yet as far as just the 3 games we played in the practices, but I just try to hit him in the pocket every time, and he can shoot it from anywhere.
I spent a lot of time over the last couple of years dissecting some of these pressers and, poking holes in some of the stuff that Fred said. Let me do the opposite here. I'm still going to poke some stuff at what Davion says, but I'm going to read between the lines of a few things and the deeper meaning of some of the stuff he's saying. Number one, I really appreciate the fact that you have a 26-year-old who is paying compliments to a 20-year-old. And he's going to say something here that really got my ear perked up. Tell me when you hear it.
I even make a bad pass, he still catches and shoots it. He's a really good shooter. He's a smart player, and even if it's a bad pass, he knows how to put the ball on the ground. So he's a dimensional player who actually helps me out a little bit.
That is probably the absolute antithesis of what Fred VanVleet would have said in that exact situation. Nick laughed, saying, also look at his posture. Sure. It is a little crossed up, but I'm not going to read too much into that. It is massive amounts of humility. First of all, self-deprecation to its finest, even if it's a bad pass, Grady's good enough to catch it. Well, he's basically saying occasionally he has thrown some bad passes. And guess what? As someone who's studying his tape, yes, he has. He's also thrown some absolutely brilliant passes. May I just add that in? He's thrown some absolutely brilliant passes this preseason. I love the fact that he's willing to do that. And I love that it's not condescending at all. There's no element of I'm teaching Grady, Grady's my rook. Grady's a young fella. Grady's my favorite project. You know what I mean? There's none of that. There's no ego. And that's beautiful. Do you remember last year with Dennis Schroeder? You remember the previous year with Fred VanVleet? My God, I was losing my mind. There's none of that here. And if you want to listen to Emmanuel Quickly talk about Grady, it's the same thing. You want to hear RJ Barrett talk about Grady or any of the young guys, it's the same thing. There's no condescension here. You know what I found myself thinking about yesterday? Just not to keep pausing on Davion's great interview, but let me just make myself a little bit bigger and say this. You know what I kept thinking about yesterday? I kept thinking about what if, and maybe that's toxic and stupid of me, but I kept thinking, man, Masai really, we've been trying to wonder what happened to the Raptors development for years now, right? We've been like, oh man, that Precious Achiuwa, he was a real dummy. Well, what if Precious Achiuwa wasn't a dummy? What if Malachi Flynn wasn't a bust? What if Delano Banton didn't just miraculously not work out? What if you just kept planting seeds that were perfectly good seeds in rotten soil? What if these guys came into a system in which their condescending ass leader was trying to grill them and wasn't trying to make them better? Is it possible? Entertain it. Because I'll tell you right now, as high as I'm on Jonathan Mobo's athletic potential and his versatility as a big who can take it off the rim, everything I'm saying about Jonathan Mobo could be said double about Precious Achua. And he's a much better athlete. Much better athlete. And you got Precious Achua at 22 as well. It's not like you got him as a 26-year-old. You got Precious Achua at 22, and he was supposed to become something for us. And I think Masai really expected him to become something, and he didn't. And he didn't. And it's like one day, I swear to God, I'm going to write a book and call it The 3 Years Where Nothing Grew in Toronto. Like 3 years of winter where nothing grew. And now I'm seeing it all unclogged. And kudos, thank God for this community, man. Thank God for this community raising hell the way we did about the selfish bullshit culture on this team. And now we are seeing this. A 26-year-old, very decorated, very accomplished collegiate player who could absolutely have come in and thought he was better than everybody and whatever, and thought, hey, I'm a lottery pick. You know how many players are lottery picks and just become really delusional about themselves? He's so real about himself. I am a very big Davion fan right now, and I feel very bad that I've spent most of preseason kind of talking him down a little bit. So I'm going to apologize, and I'm just going to say I'm going to give it a fair shot from here on out. Okay.
The Raptors have talked a lot about your off-ball defense. How do you work on that, and what does that mean to you?
I think for me, it's just watching more film, keep watching the spots, and then also just watching other players who are really good defensively, like Drew Holiday, who are really good in really good positions, getting steals where when the center turns his back, little things like that, and trying to add that to my game, but also just being aware. I think every time when I'm off the ball, I kind of relax a little bit because I'm just on ball pressure. I put so much.
W accountability. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And you know what? I waited for an entire year for Fred VanVleet to say, yeah, sometimes I take shots that I shouldn't take. And I never heard it, ever. At least not in a non-flippant way. This is awesome. Look, I have two issues sometimes with Davion, which is basically everything he's addressed here. His off-ball defense is porous. It's bad. And his on-ball defense is great. And I wish that he could fix his off-ball awareness. And the fact that he's aware of it, the fact that he's willing to acknowledge it this way, the fact that Darko is aware of it and they're working on it gives me a lot of hope that he is going to become much better. If he keeps going here, he might materialize into a legit backup guard for you. And now you have a brilliant problem, which is the same problem you had. By the way, shout outs to We the North Part 1. You remember you had a bit of a problem where you had Kyle Lowry and you had two legit backup guards and everyone was kind of splitting hairs between Fred and DeLon. I mean, people don't really remember that because people just think about how Fred turned out versus how DeLon turned out. But DeLon is a legit backup point guard. Fred is a legit backup point guard and now a starter. They were both really good players. If you end up with a similar situation with Davion and Jamal Shed, consider yourself very blessed because I seem to remember 2 years ago, we only had one point guard. Now we might have three. It's great.
On the ball, like I relax after the ball's out of the hand. So I just got to get better at that.
Jamal and DJ have both talked about you. Jamal talked about DJ. Is there a camaraderie between the three, like ball pressure defense guards in the locker room?
I think it started in training camp. Even started like in summer league when I was here a little bit, where I practiced them a little bit, and they was picking up. But they seen me pick it up, so it was like, okay, we're going to do the same thing basically because this is how to get our team wins, speeds the offense up, it makes it harder for them. So just kind of just picking up off each other. They're both really good defensive guards who are athletic, who can beat their man to the spot. So
I'm sorry. Is Davion Mitchell talking about the guys who are gunning for his spot? And he's paying them oodles and oodles of compliments? I hate zero-sum thinkers. This is not a zero-sum thinker. I love it.
I think we just learn off each other.
Have you been able to offer any specific insight to either one of them?
A little bit. I think that sometimes we're...
Little bit. really downplaying what he's meant to those guys, because I'm hearing those guys talk about him and they're massively overplaying the role that he's had. The fact that he's underplaying it is also very good.
Even Jamal off ball, like he relaxes too because he's so good on the ball. I think that when we get off the ball, we tend to think like, all right, it's our time to relax. We just put all this ball pressure, so let's relax off the ball. But me and him both got to just stay aware. Like we got to just keep driving, keep pushing, like even if we're not on the ball. So I think I talked to him about that a little bit.
We're a week away from the home opener. What do you think that this team needs to do to get ready for the regular season? Like, what would you like to focus on over the next 7 days?
I think that's it's a good question. I think for us is keep learning from each other and keep staying connected on defense, but also finish the possessions. I think the first game we played Boston, we didn't finish a lot of possessions. They got a lot of easy points off just 50-50 balls, second chance points, like not boxing out. And then we talked about it, we watched film on it, and then we worked on it in practice. And the next game, I don't think they had that many second chance points. You know what I'm saying? So we just keep talking about it and keep learning from each other and keep doing the little things. I think it's going to make us a lot better as a team.
Coach has mentioned a couple times that offensive rebounds are going to be a focus of the team this year.
Yeah.
What's that been like for you in terms of balancing that with transition defense?
I think for me it's a little bit different because I came from Sacramento, who actually one guard always stays back. So
This is confirmed true. I also want to say I spoke to someone who covers the Sacramento Kings. I spoke to two people who cover the Sacramento Kings and covered Davion very closely throughout his time, his first 3 years in Sacramento. And they said, you know, yeah, he's not a perfect basketball player, but he's about as good a person as you could imagine. He's really kind and really courteous when cameras are off. He's not dismissive. He's not rude. His teammates really like him. So, yeah, W people, man, just great. Look, there's like 3-4 teams realistically that have a chance to win a championship, and then there's everybody else. And you can say it doesn't really matter if you're second place, third place, fourth place. In the end, if you don't have 16 wins in the playoffs, you had a failed season. I prefer not to look at things in such a black and white way. I do think that there are certain teams that are going to be really fun to watch this season because they're going to grow, they're going to play together, they're going to play a brand of basketball that's aesthetically pleasing. And then there are certain teams that are going to underperform, have bad body language, and just be terrible and awful to watch. I am just looking forward to rooting for this team because I think it's really nice to root for people who are, good people.
I'm kind of a little bit different. I got to still learn to crash. Sometimes I tend to just not crash. I just look at the ball and just get back and think about transition defense if we miss a shot. So I kind of got to learn from that and watch film. He talked to me about it a couple times, but sometimes I'll be thinking like, man, I'm the smallest dude on the court. There's no way I'm going to get this. so sometimes I just stay back, but I got to keep getting better at it.
Is there a dynamic between picking up full court to kind of like stop the ball so other people can go back, and how do you interact with that?
Explain that question. I'm sorry.
So, like, if they get the ball quickly,
Yeah.
and they're about to go up court, applying pressure can kind of slow the outlet pass.
Weird small things that you notice when you hear people talk at length, especially when they're being as open, as honest as him. People typically, when they don't fully understand a question, usually blanket statement the answer. I really like when people ask for clarification when they don't. It shows an insight into his communication skills. And if he's being held accountable for being a leader to at least some of your young players, I mean, obviously Jacoby and Jamal Shed have both talked about him like he could be a leader for them. I wouldn't be surprised if guys like Grady could look to him as a leader. He's also older than Scottie. I mean, certainly there are probably certain things that Scottie could learn from him as well as there are probably things about, that he can learn from Scottie, etc. So, I mean, technically he's older than Manuel Quickly. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things and you just want your leaders to have great communication skills. I'm noticing a lot of that with Garrett Temple, Kelly Olynyk, Jakob Poeltl, really good communicators. Don't know very much about Bruce Brown, but I'm assuming he's pretty good as well. If Davion is like, there's like two schools of thought. On the one hand, he's 26. He was just a rookie in Scottie's draft class. So maybe you look at him like a young player. I think there's another school of thought where you think of him more like the Bruce Brown type, where he's like a vet, and he's certainly acting like a vet. And in my humble opinion, if he wants to extend his career and have like a 12-year career as a guard who isn't necessarily the greatest shooter, I think that will be the most valuable thing that he can bring to a team is just be that veteran presence, backup point guard who's super steady and can, set the table, provide great point of attack defense. There are plenty of guys who've made a career on that, and I think he could be one of them.
They score or do they not score?
You guys missed the shot.
Then we get back. You don't stop the ball basically when they miss a shot because you got to basically, it's like transition defense. So you got to just load and everyone's basically scramble mode after that because as fast as we play and as fast as other teams play, like it's kind of hard for me to stop the ball 94 feet even after I miss a shot because I got to help other teammates, yeah.
They've had some, your defense attracts a lot of attention. You had 9 assists, I think, last night. What's some of your focus in terms of creating some of these opportunities for your teammates?
I mean, I think just using my speed to get into the paint. And then if taking what they give me, if they let me shoot the three, shoot the ball, and just shoot it with confidence. And I mean, and Yacht sets really good screens. Scottie sets really good screens. A lot of attention on Scottie. So they kind of tend to lean towards over him. So I get in the paint and just make the right play.
If I took a shot for every single compliment he paid to his teammates in this 5-minute interview, I think I'd be drunk.
Try to make the right play every single time.
It's really good.
It's been to your benefit that you've had all these reps with most of the starters, I guess, or is it and how might that affect or change when IQ comes back?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I think that every year you're going to have people out. You're not going to have like a 100% team every year. So just learning now in the preseason, with like you said, some of the starters are going to help me out a lot. Just building that chemistry. But even when IQ comes, I mean, he's a really smart player, so he's not going to basically demand the ball all the time. Like he just wants to win, just like everyone else. So I think sometimes I'm going to bring the ball up. Of course, sometimes he is. I mean, I play off the ball before, so I kind of know how to play off a little bit. So just learning to play with him is going to be good for us.
Is that something they talk about? You guys maybe doing kind of a two-headed point guard?
I mean, they haven't said anything yet, but I mean, honestly, I'm just here to play, honestly.
Good answer. Because again, basketball is weirdly zero-sum, and also you don't want it to be zero-sum, but there can only be 5 starters, there can only be 5 closers. So immediately when you start saying things that are individualistic, and you have to be really careful about that because those quotes do get publicized and pulled out of context. If he says, yeah, I see myself as a closer for this team, well, then now all his teammates are looking around and suddenly it's a competitive thing within. And, there's a time and place for it. These guys are not stupid. They understand that there's only so many minutes. They understand that there's a healthy way to compete with each other. And then there's a way to basically try and destroy each other. And, there's, as I said, there's a healthy way to do it. There's an unhealthy way to do it. And I think this is a very healthy way to go about it, which is, plead the fifth and say, yeah, I'm here to play basketball.
You have a bit of a relationship with Walter, I assume, going back to your time at Baylor. What has it been like for him, and how?
Going back to your time in Baylor is weird because, okay, so, I mean, I hope that this question is not insinuating that they played together. They did not. But again, as I mentioned earlier, Jacoby Walter did mention at some point that he chose Baylor specifically because of Davion Mitchell. And that's really impressive that they're on the same team together. And the fact that he's about to talk about their relationship and how much, they're working off each other. So I love that.
How have you helped him as he sort of has a weird start to his rookie season?
Yeah, I think that when he first got here, and I think we had summer league practice, I don't think Jacoby's never actually really played against me before in like actual practice. We played before in like pickup, but that's not really the same. So I remember one practice, I put ball pressure on him and he kind of was like struggling. And I kind of taught him little things like, like, don't look for the play, like actually just play basketball. Like if I'm pressuring you like that, if you just try to go by me, I'm gonna like have to back up. But if you just try to run a play, I'm just gonna keep pressuring you. You're gonna just kind of look crazy out there, honestly. So teach him little things like that because he's still a rookie, so he's trying to do everything the coach says, but he also got to be a basketball player too. Like if someone's pressuring you 90 feet, you have the speed and athleticism to get by him and make a play. Like you're good enough to do that. So teaching him little things like that, and on the bench, I mean, he's asking me questions like, how do you cut him off here? Like, when I get back, we got to play one-on-one, things like that we talked about when I was at Baylor. So, he's a really good friend of mine.
I got to say, I really love, again, I've come a really long way on Jacoby Walter since he was drafted till now. Even in the summer league, I wasn't like overly hype about him. Like you'll notice that I spent a lot of my summer talking a lot about Ulrich Shamshay. And it wasn't until I got a lot more insight into Jacoby, looking back at his high school tape, talking with his trainer, which is a video we dropped a couple of weeks ago with Eric. Shout out Eric, and thanks a lot for doing that. And again, the more you learn about certain people, the more you have to adjust your bias. And if there's one thing about me that I'll say conclusively is I'm willing to change my mind 100%. As more information presents itself, I'm willing to change my mind. So with Jacoby, it was a few things, watching his high school tape was very illuminating for me. Talking to Eric was also very illuminating because you get some behind the scenes, insight into who the kid is, how he works, and that to me is very important. That's certainly due diligence that Masai and Bobby would have done when they brought him in. And then, the third thing was talking to somebody who's a little bit closer to the Raptors, talking about where they saw him as a prospect and how they had him evaluated, which is something that I alluded to yesterday. So now the fourth thing here is just the fact that he is looking up to a guy like Davion shows me what he's about too. And given the fact that he's much bigger and probably a much more fluid scorer and athlete than Davion, if he can pick up Davion's intensity, well, Jacoby is going to be so good for this team. And I love that he asks as many questions as he does. That was something that really perked me up about Ulrich Shamshay, which is there's no ego here. He's not a person who's going to act like he knows it all. And trust me, I've seen a lot of young players. J.R. Smith really comes to mind as a guy who managed to succeed in spite of it, but there's so many others that failed because of it. And that's the ego. When you come out as a 5-star recruit, you got all these people in your ear gassing you up, telling you should start, you should be this, you should be that. Coach is a bum. You get in the wrong headspace. You really do. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen with guys that you might assume it doesn't happen with. Everyone has an issue with how their coach is using them or their minutes or whatever. However, it is often these players who ask a lot of questions, who are deeply curious, who are open-minded, that are going to benefit the most from a coach that is really, or a coaching staff that is deliberately trying to pour into them. And you don't second guess it as much. And I do think that trust is very important here. So if Jacoby doesn't trust Darko and he doesn't trust Jama, well, now when they're asking you to go down to the G League, and you might look at it differently. You might be a little bit hesitant about it. You might be, and it's so important. It's so important that a player trusts their coaching staff. Again, most coaching staffs, I won't say most because I definitely won't say all, are trying to make you better. And most, if you listen to them, will. Most of them will make you better. They're not usually telling you to do stupid things. But when the trust is not there, the energy is not there, now you start to second guess everything, and it just really disrupts your development. So I'm very encouraged by everything I've heard about Jacoby Walter over the last couple of weeks. And it's really gotten me a lot more excited about his potential future with this team. Obviously, he's under team control for quite a few years now. So I'm confident right now that he's going to be a player for the Raptors. Like, this is not going to be, Bobby Webster was on the Raptor show yesterday with Blake Murphy and Matt Bonner. Shout outs to Blake Murphy and Matt Bonner on the new Raptors show. I certainly loved hearing them. And I heard Bobby Webster say that, basically they want to take a lot of shots at it, right? That the draft is effectively a crapshoot, and you want to amplify the number of attempts at it. And if you tell me that you went 2 for 4 in this draft or 2 for 5 with your rookies this year, that's an incredible success rate. Incredible. Because the average draft is going to yield about 13 to 14 players, and you didn't have one of the top 18 picks. So the fact that you ended up with 2 is great. Am I crazy to think we ended up with 4? That would be really elite. And that can really speed up your development. As I mentioned yesterday and many times before, we have 5 picks coming up in the next 2 drafts. We may accumulate more at the trade deadline, depending on what we do with Bruce Brown. And it seems like Darko Rajakovic has got the Midas touch because, as the title of this video says, the Raptors are back. What I mean by that is not the Raptors are back to competing for championships. What I mean by that is the vibes that carried us through the Kyle and DeMar era are back. Okay, let's hear from the franchise player, Scottie Barnes.
What did you think of Brady's game last night? You guys connected. I think you said at least 4 or 5 of his buckets, and where do you think his game has got to over the summer?
Grady ended the season really well last year, and he was playing really great, just moving off the ball, cutting, shooting the ball really well. And, we put our trust and faith in him that he was going to get better.
I really appreciate that he didn't call Grady his favorite project. I love that.
And he obviously did, just getting better shooting, making decisions more with the ball off the dribble, getting to his pull-ups and doing things like that. So, we've got a lot of faith and trust in Grady, and, we know what he can do. He went out there and did his thing last night, but, that's Grady.
In terms of just you two and the connection, is it stuff we're seeing? Is it things that, specific kind of actions that you work on, or are you guys kind of at a point now where you're just kind of reading each other and playing off of each other?
Yeah, that's basically what we're doing. We're reading each other when we're out on the floor. I look towards him, run down the court. Just trying to play downhill with force, and then we make eye contact. Sometimes he backdoors, sometimes he pulls up. It's just reading the game.
I haven't heard Scottie Barnes take credit for Grady's success last night, and I'm disturbed. Is this what leadership looks like? Nice. It's good to know. Sorry, I just keep taking backhanded compliments. Backhanded swipes at the past regime, because part of me is just so happy, but part of me is also reliving the pain of listening to bad leadership. It's great to hear good leadership in Toronto.
There's moments, especially last night, where he's either setting the screen for you inverted, or there's a handoff between you and him. And I'm sure a lot of that gets worked out in practice, but what about Grady's game makes it so easy for you to play with?
Grady stretches out the floor. He brings a lot of attention to him. People have to respect him shooting the ball. That's what he does. Me able to get downhill and be able to spread it out for threes or running actions for him, just going to help our team out so much with the shooting and spacing the floor.
There's obviously a lot of hallmarks as a cutter to look for. Some are scripted. Sometimes you have to do it to, shape the floor properly. But when the guy shows you his numbers, there's stuff like that. As a passer, what are you looking for to know somebody's gonna make a cut? Are you looking for them to clear hips, shoulders? What stands out to you as a passer?
It's just all about the read. If they got a step on them, just try to throw it to the right spot, lead them towards the rim. It's really the main thing. It's just about reading it, how the defender's playing you. Sometimes they're under. So that's most of the time you should come off the handoff. But, sometimes they try to beat you to the spot from not letting you use the screen, and, you get the back door. So it's easy to make that pass.
How is the conditioning coming along in terms of getting up to game speed? Obviously, you've had a few preseason games now, but it's coming after 7 months without competitive basketball. Are you feeling physically prepared for the regular season?
I feel pretty good. What we play and the way we're going to have to play throughout the season, it's going to be a lot of hard work, and we're going to be able to have to move our bodies. So, we got to be well rested, get good treatment, make sure, we're getting active with our training staff to make sure our body's prepared. But
I think this is the biggest difference for him, and it's going to be the biggest difference for him, is all those little hacks that a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan, well, not so much Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant specifically, really leaned into. LeBron James, because I know Michael Jordan was a psycho, right? He would be up all night gambling and then go to a basketball game with whiskey in his system. I'm not talking about that. But for most mere mortals, most other players not named Michael Jordan, sleep is important, rest and recovery is important, all those other things, limiting sugar in your diet, stuff like that. And I do think that being young, sometimes, you fall into bad habits. So I really hope that this entire team has really bought into the idea of being a pro. And that's why you have Garrett Temples and guys like that, right? Because those are the guys who are going to see you eating sugar in the morning and explain to you why that's going to make you have a bad game. Those are the guys who are going to see you come into practice with 2 hours of sleep, and they're going to teach you how to properly map out your sleep. These small things go a very long way in terms of optimizing consistency and performance throughout. And, there is that video that I did with Catherine about the superpower of sleep that is still technically in the works because we were going to re-record it, but I'll release the version of it that I have at some point if we don't do the other one, because it's important. Sleep is very important.
Other than that, conditioning wise, felt pretty good.
You've got 7 days until the home opener. What would you personally like to focus on to get ready for that game and the rest of the regular season?
Just staying consistent. Keep doing what we do. Play the right way, playing smart, and just keep being us.
Scottie, we saw you really engaged in a couple possessions defending against Tatum last night. Was there something about that matchup that you really liked from the defensive standpoint?
I play defense. That's what I do. No matter who I'm out there guarding, I'm going to guard the right way.
Is there a special pride that you take in terms of, because obviously Tatum coming out the championship, gold medal USA?
The whole team just won the championship. So, I just was going out there playing defense the game before that. I was being very active on the ball.
Okay, I need to hear that again. I mean, if you know me, you know why he's my favorite player, right? It's because of moments like this.
So, I'm just...
Hang on.
Is there a special pride that you take in terms of, because obviously Tatum coming out the championship, gold medal USA?
The whole team just won the championship. So, I just was going out there playing defense the game before that. I was being very active on the ball every game. I'm just trying to set the tone.
There were a couple of moments also last night offensively where you settled into mid-range shots. Like I remember one where you bumped Jaylen Brown and settled into a jumper. Obviously, that was an area you mentioned that you were growing in. Like, how is your comfortability level in that mid-range now compared to maybe last year?
Just being able to find the right moments to take it.
Realist 123 with a €5 super chat. I really appreciate you. We don't get a lot of Euro super chats. This is very cool, and not to worry, man. Look, can I share something with y'all just to disrupt the Scottie thing for a second? And I want to go behind the scenes and just give you an explanation as to why I did what I did on the panel today, because I was absolutely going crazy on the panel today. I disrespected LeBron James. I didn't really disrespect him. I said that Michael Jordan was clearly better because I knew that was going to get clipped and get me a lot of hate for it. I spent 25 minutes explaining why Jaylen Brown isn't very good, or at least isn't as good as people think he is, because I figured that might get some Boston media or Boston attention. And I took a couple of swipes at Chris Bosh, saying that he's not even close to Anthony Davis. And the chat was angry as hell. And I know that rage bait goes a really long way. But the real reason that I did all of that was because there's a golden nugget in that video at the 1 hour, 28 minute, and 11 second mark, where I talk about how good Scottie Barnes is. And I talk about the game that he had yesterday, and I talk about him being all NBA. And if that video blows up, that's more attention on what I really want. That's my 4D chess perspective on it. If people want to hate what I said about Jaylen Brown, it's not like I'm lying. I really do feel that way. I don't think he's the second best player on the Boston Celtics, and that's my view. But sometimes there's a grander perspective on what I'm trying to do. Sometimes I push the envelope just because I know it's going to get a little bit of kickback. And sometimes it's one extreme correcting another extreme just to find a middle. And of course, if you say, I don't know, for instance, when people were saying Pascal Siakam's a top 7 player in the league, and I'm like, he's not a top 25 player. Did I really feel he wasn't top 25? I felt he was 24th. So I'm going to say he's not top 25, and then people are going to get really angry. But then suddenly people are like, well, one side's saying 7th, and one side's saying top 25. And, when I said Scottie's better than Pascal, that was exactly what I was trying to accomplish. Did I really think Scottie was definitively better than Pascal at that time? No. But I felt it was really close, and I felt that the extreme needed to be corrected. So sometimes that's what I do. Okay. I'm not trying to be a troll. I'm not doing any of that, but I've learned to not take comments personally. And that's been a really big shift for me. So sometimes I just be yapping and saying crazy stuff. Don't worry about it. And thank you so much for the super chat. This was not necessary amends or anything like that, but I appreciate you checking out our channel here, and welcome to the community. I hope you stick around. Okay.
Spots and being able to just really lift up and shoot it. So, I'm comfortable there. It's about finding the right moments and the right time and the right place to do it. So whenever it's available, I want to take it. I feel comfortable shooting those shots, and I work on those shots every day.
When is the right time to take those shots as opposed to let the offense play out a little more?
As long as I'm playing with force and trying to get downhill, not settling, doing the 3, 4, 5 dribble combo moves and then just pulling up. Me, it was more getting downhill into the shoulder bump and then being able to lift up. So whenever I'm playing with force and, they take away that one option and being able to get to that, I feel like that's the right time to do it.
I know you said you play defense, of course, but Jonathan Mobo, your friend, when he was drafted, some people were wondering about the foot speed stepping out onto wings after being more of a big at the collegiate level. He had the great defense that Tatum made the shot over at the end of the first half. He picked Jaylen clean in one-on-one defense. What did you make of his job on that end?
I just want to interject. I just shared Sampson's article on Twitter where he broke down all of Scottie Barnes' pick and roll possessions last year, and that's great. I just want to say one thing, and I'm not trying to be critical of Sampson. Obviously, I'm trying to smooth things over and not continuously beef with people in the media. I hate this notion of Jonathan Mobo always being referenced as Scottie Barnes' friend, because I think, unfortunately, it drives this narrative that he's only on this team because Scottie's his friend. And I just don't think that that's true. And I've sort of always resented that always being brought up. It's really nice. Like, there was a comment from somebody, and I can't remember who, they said that, well, if it all goes horribly, at least Scottie has a friend on the team. And it's just, it minimizes the work that Jonathan has done to get himself to the point where he could be drafted like this. And I know what these people do, and I know how they think. And I've spoken, obviously, extensively to them behind the scenes. So I understand where they're going at with that narrative. I think Jonathan's a hell of a player. I really do. I would take him 31st if he knew Scottie, didn't know Scottie. I love the pick. So just want to say that. And, salute Samson folk. Not coming at you, just saying. I wish that wasn't always brought up. Like, who are we telling that to? Are we telling that Scottie doesn't know his friend from grade 3? He knows. He knows. Like, it was cool when it initially, what a coincidence. But now it feels like we're trying to drive home this idea that he's his buddy, and he's not. He's a professional basketball player. Respect that.
I think he did a great job. Being able to stay in front of those guys, being active on the ball. That's one of his best things that he does. Play defense and be able to be active. He has long arms and he moves really good for his size. That's what he does. He plays defense and he takes pride in that.
You dribbled into a 20 early in the shot clock into a 3-pointer. Is that a confidence thing? Is that you've already made a few now? I'm feeling it, or is that something you're seeing on the court? Hey, let me run off the court and take that shot.
Well, I've been working on that a lot this summer. It's honestly one of my favorites.
I've told y'all he was doing this all summer.
Shots. So, whenever I'm able to take those, like I said, it's about the time and situation. A lot of times, you want to come and shoot it, but, let a couple fall before you shoot it. So I have a lot of confidence in that shot, and I like taking those shots. So I feel confident in it.
What have you made of Davion's playmaking? I think he had 9 assists last night. He's got a lot of reps with the kind of starting unit, so to speak. Is he a point guard you enjoy working with?
He's smart. What's the question again?
Just Davion as a point guard. I mean, it's only been a few weeks here, but is he a guy who elevates the guys around him?
Yeah, his intensity out there on both ends of the floor. You can really see it. And then when you're out there playing with him, you can feel it, his presence when he's out there on the floor. But, he's getting downhill, making those extra passes, and, he's making those right reads.
You guys went to Jamison Battle a lot earlier last night than you had in previous games. What have you seen from him that you've liked so far?
We talked about it earlier that this year is about learning our roster, exploring. We talked about using all 15 players. In this case, when we have two-way guys as well on the team, using those guys as well. And I will not be shying away from throwing those guys in the game as well. As coaches, we go in a game with idea of what we would like to see. But also game presents different challenges or opportunities, and I found opportunity for him to come early. He just does a lot of stuff on a good level. First of all, his shooting is legit. He's a really good 3-point shooter, and that opens up a lot of stuff. Opens up the floor. Teammates are very confident to find him when he's in those situations. And from there, I see potential for him to continue to develop his game. I like left-handed players, left-handed shooters that can create shots, but also get to their left hand and get it all the way to the rim. And defensively, he's showing signs of improvement as well.
So I don't know how active on Twitter you are, but the design for the ghosted screen out of horns for the skip pass, where Grady came off the corner to catch one of your first baskets, maybe the 6th point. Did you pick that up from Dan Hurley at UConn?
Yes. I always love to watch college. I'm watching a lot of international basketball. There are amazing coaches out there, and I'm always trying to pick up something that can be good fit for our team.
Shout outs Coach Hurley, one of my favorite coaches, and absolutely my favorite coach in college basketball on the men's side. Love him.
As well, and for our personnel, yes.
Are you sitting on anything interesting for the rest of the year? Or are there some sets? You don't have to say.
Oh, I have a bunch of stuff. I have a pretty big playbook right now. I'm trying to get the basics in.
According to Doug Smith and various people in this media space, Darko's playbook is basically a coloring book.
But there is a lot of stuff, and as we evolve as a team, there's going to be more wrinkles to it.
Last night you mentioned that Grady, there's more to Grady than just the spot-up shooting. And, looking back at his development over the last year, it started off with the corner offense and maximizing the corner, then starting using him in inverted ball screens and getting him moving off the catch. I'm wondering, the process of stacking those skills together, is that more instinctual to say, hey, Grady can do this certain thing, let's maximize it? Or are you implementing those things into his, kind of skill set?
With each player, you want to see what are some of the natural things that player does. And I think that Grady has a very good feel to pass the ball. I think that's very underrated skill that a lot of times with him, it's not, it's easily overlooked because of all other things that he does. And with that being said, it just intrigues me from the start, thinking what kind of player he can be in the future and how to maximize his potential. And I'm a big believer that you need to constantly work on your game and constantly improve your game, constantly add to your game. And with him, if I throw 5 things at him at one time, it might be too much. That's why we're trying to have really methodology, good approach that we are slowly sprinkling in things. He's already working on some stuff that I'm not allowing him to use in the game yet, so he needs to go through those repetitions in the workouts. He needs to go through those in practice.
Dub, I'm pretty sure Grady's pulling from the logo in a year. Let's do it.
Play groups, in all of those situations versus coaches versus players before I say, okay, now it's time. Let's see what it looks like in real NBA game.
How many reps are needed practice-wise before it gets tried out in a game?
I mean, there is no...
Chat, are there any guesses as to what Grady is working on that Darko won't allow him to? We have arbiter Jaquan saying skyhook. Any other guesses?
No, there is no number that you can put on. I think when it comes down to progress and for improvement, people talking about, you need 10,000 shots to get it automatic. I think it never stops. There is always something that you can continue improving and then continue adding, and you got to be intentional about your work. When it becomes just a routine of repeating the same things without you being present with your mind and body there, it's the improvement stops. So once I see
Mr. Canada, he's a demon on transition 3. He got that already.
That he's
SP is my favorite answer so far. Dream Shake. All right, let's do it, Grady. Dream Shake time.
Doing this kind of stuff in a practice setup that I feel comfortable, then I'll start using that in the games as well.
Coach, do you have an update on Jamal Shead?
He's doing well.
I'm curious also, you're a week away from the home opener. sort of 7 days, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish in terms of fine-tuning this team?
We just need to focus on maximizing every day. It's 7 days to the home opener, but for us, this whole season, we gotta look at this whole season as one big chunk. And the main focus needs to be for us to play hard, to learn what it means to play hard, and then to have fine tuning there. To learn like that's overly physical, that's a foul, don't do it. I always think when you start really aggressive and you can pull it back, it's much easier than to be back and now say, let's be more aggressive. So there are a lot of things that we need to clean up, but also I got to be very strategic what I'm addressing with the team so they can be able to go out there and execute that.
We've seen from Scottie a few times in the preseason, he'll dribble into a pull-up sort of mid-range jump shot.
This is probably one of the most interesting questions that he was asked, and I'm super curious how this ended up. I didn't listen to this whole thing before we did the live, so I was just spot checking it, and I'm like, oh, I really want to hear what he has to say about Scottie mid-range.
That's traditionally not the most efficient shot. How do
Debatable, very debatable, and very seldom understood.
you feel about him taking those shots?
Depending of the situation, depending of spacing on the floor. Obviously, Scottie is amazing rim finisher, and that's where he makes his best decisions of finding his teammates as well. But as a part of his development and growth is getting to those situations as well and being efficient. And for him, it's now recognizing when that shot makes sense and when that shot does not make sense. If you want to develop all-star level player, he needs to become 3-level scorer. He needs to be able to be, at the rim, shooting threes, but also playing in that mid-range. But there is always fine balance. He cannot just fall in love in that and becomes like part of offense that makes our offense stagnant. But also when we need a bucket and we need to put the ball in his hands, him being able to get to those sweet spots and knock down shots. When he gets there with his force and length and the high release, it's not easy to guard those shots as well.
I completely agree. Here's the thing. So there was a question about why is the video a little bit gray? I just want to point out yesterday we had a bump in live, and I'm pissed as hell. Actually, I'll share afterward why the video is gray.
Do you have an update on Walter and how do you think him missing so much time now is going to impact him at the start of the season?
He's missing time now, but also he's been working on some stuff that he would not be focused at this point. He's really focusing on his footwork, getting stronger, getting in a better balance, working your defensive movements as well.
He was also shooting around, I think, yesterday. It's worth noting. So, Jacoby's feeling better.
So there are things that right now he's working on and that he's improving. So obviously missing time is not something that you look for, but I think he's going to be just fine. And when he comes back, we're gonna have a strategic plan with him, how to incorporate him into the team and then how to continue his growth.
Love it.
At media day, yourself, Masai, even Scottie himself talked about leadership being one of the qualities he's looking to cultivate. Now that he came back from training camp and preseason, what have you seen that kind of reinforces those steps he's made as a leader?
I have a feeling this is going to be a conversation about that moment yesterday. It's a feeling. I don't know.
I think we had a great chance to see last night the way he was competing, the way he was engaged, the way he was talking. Like him setting a high standard for everybody else. I think it's the best leadership that you can have from 23-year-old, and with that, his leadership is seen through, being him vocal, owning his mistakes, being open to learn and being coached. He's doing a lot of great stuff, and so I'm really proud of all the steps that he's making there as a leader of this team. So we gotta continue pounding on that.
Darko, along that lines, there was a play in the fourth quarter last night where,
Of course, we know who's going to ask this question. That's going to cue up my gray video thing right away too.
Scottie wanted to challenge on a out of bounds call that kind of didn't go his way, and then Derek White got a 3, and then he got a moving screen, and then you called timeout. And it seemed like afterwards, not only did that stop the Celtics run, but I thought Scottie really locked in defensively against Tatum. Was there anything that you specifically said to him about sort of refocusing on the game and completing what was otherwise just an excellent game?
Exactly. I mean, game of basketball is emotional game, and I love when players have emotional outbursts. He saw something there. It was short time. They inbounded the ball quickly. We were looking at the review. We were not sure can we call it, and we just ended up that they inbounded the ball. So we were late to call that one.
I like accountability in coaches, and I love when he owns his mistakes. There was a whole kerfuffle last night when we were discussing that call in the live when I was criticizing that Scottie shouldn't have done that, where someone said Darko should have called a timeout. He's kind of admitting that himself right now, which I really like, and I appreciate that. And I'm pretty sure if he goes back, he'll probably realize that Scottie was right. And typically, what we saw with Nick Nurse and Pascal Siakam was when your star player is really adamant about a call, you usually call it. That's typically something that coaches do. And yeah, I mean, that's the trade. And, Darko's admitting he was late to it.
So we still did not have our meeting with players. We were waiting for that for a couple more days before the start of regular season to explain what our process is going to be with coaches' challenges, how we want to use that, how we want to rely on our players, etc. So my teaching point was there, like, we got to focus on the next play. Game of basketball is not going to be perfect. We're not going to, all of us, we're going to be making mistakes, but how quickly we can refocus and get back in the game and do what it takes to win the game.
Please, God, if I forget it, remind me about the Florida State Scottie story as it pertains to this.
So I'm glad I missed that challenge because it gave me opportunity to coach and address some bigger things.
Love it. That was a great response. Shout outs to Willu for asking that question, I guess. Whew. Okay, two quick things before we get into the ESPN top 100. Number one, the thing with Scottie at Florida State, etc. There was an emotional moment, I think, with Scottie, yelled at a coach or something of that sort, like where he was very upset about something and he kind of I don't know, he threw his mouthpiece, something like that. I can't remember exactly the details, but he was out of line for sure. And this is what I said yesterday. Darko's a coach. He's a player. You don't get to cuss out your coach. You don't, whenever a player cuts, it doesn't matter if you're right. It's not helping anybody. It's not helping your teammates, and you got to pick and choose your spots. But it's never going to be okay for me that a player cusses out his coach or slams the mouthpiece or goes to the bench and avoids giving a dap. You got to keep the positive energy because your team is feeding off of you, especially when you're the leader. But I remember this instance of Scottie, and he's a very emotional player, as you can tell from watching him for the last 4 years. And I remember the story from him at Florida State, where he did have an outburst like that at Florida State. And he, if I remember the story correctly, and again, please forgive me because this is 5 years ago when I heard this story for the first time, he came up to the coach after the game, and he almost had a tear in his eye, and he apologized. And he said, he'll never do it again. He was really sorry. And it's moments like that you really get a window into who Scottie Barnes is. He is the ultimate competitor. Nobody wants to win more than him, okay? And when his teammates are out of pocket, when his teammates are missing easy passes, when they're missing rotations, he sees things that his teammates simply do not. He's ahead of the play. One of the beautiful things about Darko Rajakovic is that, he's able to nurture genius in a really beautiful way. Scottie's not a normal player, and I think Scottie knows that, but I think also Darko knows that. And when you're nurturing genius, you have to, I'm not saying you have to use kid gloves, but you have to adjust your nurturing or your coaching to the level of genius. It's very difficult to coach players who are so ahead, not just for their age. Scottie doesn't have good basketball IQ for a 23-year-old. He has good basketball IQ for a 90-year-old. So when he's seeing things on the court, when he's seeing mistakes that his teammates are making, when as a rookie, he's seeing passes that Fred VanVleet's not making, or, rotations or screens that his teammates are missing, well, he will often get very upset about it because naturally he cares. And, learning to channel that frustration in a positive way, finding a time waiting for a timeout. This emotional discipline will go a very long way, because I think we've all seen moments where he's been missed on a cut and the next time he's not cutting, or a particular foul that got him really upset with the ref and now he picks up a technical foul at the wrong time. This is a natural part of the game. LeBron had to go through it. Kobe had to go through it. Michael had to go through it. This is not unique to Scottie. As much as this media space wants to act like it is, it's not. It's not unique. And I would so much rather a player care so much that they feel like screaming. And again, I'm biased because I've certainly chewed out a few coaches in my lifetime too. I would rather, I'd rather a player be Rasheed Wallace. I was trying to think of another Wallace just to make it poetic. I'd rather a player have the temperament of a Rasheed Wallace than maybe a player that I have to like constantly wonder if they give a shit, right? Like a Ron Artest, a Rasheed Wallace. These are very emotional players, and maybe too emotional, and they needed to dial it back. Uh, Phil Jackson was the master of using emotion and weaponizing it positively. And so he would meet a player who was very emotional, and instead of trying to suppress the emotion, which is, I think, what a lot of people wanted to do with Scottie early on, when he was dancing and looking back and snarling at people, wanted to take that away. You can't take that away. You can't take that out of his game. You need to nurture it. You need to grow with it. You need to harness and channel that in a positive direction. How can we use what is a gift effectively, which is the emotion and passion that he plays with, and how can we translate it into something positive? And I really love that not only Brian, not only his friends and his family and whatever, but also his head coach now have the exact same idea, which is we're not trying to change you into somebody else. We're trying to meet you at who you are, and we're trying to harness all the good things about you and push them into a more positive direction. It's a completely different approach to personal development, but I believe in it. The second thing about the Gray video, yes, yesterday we had 700 people in this live, and I thought that was amazing. And I was like, great. And I was on a very different energy because I had drank a couple of beers during the game, and it was funny. Anyways, midway through the stream, we got cut off, and it was partially because we let an entire post game video play throughout. And I have no idea if that was flagged by NBA or some sort of copyright or whatever, because it was playing during a broadcast. But when I looked at the copyright strike, it said San Antonio versus Miami, and I never played anything from that game. So there's a chance that what happened was they played some snippet of Darko Rajakovic's interview during the San Antonio Spurs versus Miami Heat post game. And maybe during that broadcast, they played that, and then that is a copyright strike by NBA. So we lost money yesterday in a major way. And typically when you have 700 people live, that video is going to blow up to like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. And from 1 a.m. ish, 1 a.m. When did we end the stream last night? 12:30 till about like 2 a.m. All I had was people messaging me saying the stream is not live, it's not active. We probably lost around 1,000 views, maybe more. It took me an hour to realize that the stream had been canceled afterwards, because the stream, once it paused, we had a warning and then it continued. So I thought it's all good, maybe it was a mistake, but after the stream ended, they took it off. So a lot of you tried to watch the stream, you couldn't watch it for a good hour and a half. There was like this entire pause when a whole bunch of people probably on the West Coast were trying to catch this. They couldn't catch it, and I was so freaking pissed off. Somebody reached out to me and said, try mirroring these videos to make sure you don't get any more flags, because we obviously cannot afford that. But that was a shitty opportunity. The reason I wanted to approach yesterday's post game, I'm going to share this with y'all. I mean, this is public, but I don't want to share this because I believe in being honest and forthright about things. I'm not a zero sum thinker. I typically am not. I don't really care how well somebody else is doing. I tend to focus primarily on myself. And one of my biggest, claims and biggest sources of pride is that we are the number one post game show on YouTube for the Raptors. I love that. And this year, there's some shifts in the post game situation, right? Number one, Raptors Digest is not Raptors Digest. Raptors Republic with Samson Folk is not doing the post game wrap up. So now those 150 to roughly, I don't know, 1,500, however many people watch that, they have to find a new place. There's also new quote unquote competition from Hello and Welcome, which is Will Liu and Alex Wong and that podcast. And they have the benefit of obviously being very plugged in with the media, et cetera. So I didn't know what to expect coming into this year. Obviously, I'm watching myself, but uh, and again, I want to be delicate about how I address this. The Raptors versus the Celtics first game was the first time that I saw us lose a head to head against another post game show in a very long time. And I got to tell you, like Michael Jordan, I took that shit personally. I did. I did. And it wasn't anything to take personal, obviously, because William Liu plus Samson Folk on the same podcast, you're basically dealing with your biggest competition and your second biggest competition on the same damn podcast. And I saw a lot of our regular community members going over there. So I immediately had to redial my focus. And I was at a Thanksgiving dinner at the time. And I was thinking to myself, I mean, good on them. I'm really glad that they're succeeding, but I don't want to lose that number one spot. Like, I got to do something. So, and of course, I've had a couple of stinkers. I think that first one that I did was bad. I think the one with Washington, I think one of the post games was terrible, and I apologize for it later. And we had 700 people, and the next time we had 200. So it is very crucial to me to channel whatever competitiveness I have into a positive direction. And if it takes Hello and Welcome or Raptors Digest or Raptors Republic or NBA Chev or whatever, and no disrespect to any of these channels, I just believe that Pensar Basketball should be the number one Raptors postgame show. That's what I believe. That's no disrespect to anybody else. That's just how I believe that we should be. And if that means that I got to step my game up, if that means we gotta fix some stuff, if that means we need to do video breakdowns every single time, we're gonna do it. And it's good. It's good for the community. There are plenty of teams out there that might be lucky to have two decent channels covering them. I'm very happy that the Raptors have several decent channels covering them. I just want to be the best one. I want to be the best one I can be. So that's that. Okay, let's get to the top 100. Let's go. All right. Okay. We got the top 100 players ranked by ESPN, and we're going to react to this. And let's see where we're at. Okay. And somebody asked, where can I catch the panel? Okay. I'm going to give a quick shout out to the panel before I move on here. One sec. So this is where you can catch the panel. And to those of you who don't know, I am often on Player's Choice, the panel, and it looks a little something like this. So this is where we were at earlier today. If you want to go check this video out later, you would get my perspective on the following players. Hang on. Big shout out to Player's Choice for having me on as often as they have for the last 6 months. I've been doing this pretty regularly. It's awesome. I get smoked in the comments every single day. That's awesome too. Okay, so this is basically who we talked about. We talked about Jaylen Brown being overrated for 30 minutes. People were not happy. Devin Booker, Rudy Gobert, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Brunson, Domantas Sabonis, Chris Bosh being underrated versus overrated, LaMelo Ball, Kevin Durant, all basically the top guys in the league. Some we spent 5-6 minutes talking about. I was on the show, so we're definitely going to talk about Scottie Barnes, right? Susan Garrett saying Rasheed Wallace versus Ben Wallace. That's interesting. Did I just say Susan Wallace or Susan Garrett? Susan Garrett saying Rasheed Wallace versus Ben Wallace. So Rasheed is double E1. And I know that because he was my favorite player, one of my favorite players growing up. And Rasheed Wallace versus Ben Wallace in terms of who's better, I like Rasheed better. That I don't care what people say. I loved Rasheed. Okay, so yeah, so we talked about a lot of players, and it was great. I really liked it, and if you want to check it out later, you certainly can. Okay, now back to, and again, the channel is Player's Choice. Okay, back to the top 100, and again, in that video, you would get my thoughts and also everybody else's thoughts on everybody else, including their thoughts on Scottie Barnes, etc. Cheat sheet, I was the only person who had him as a all NBA guy, but here you can get my thoughts on the top 100 players, and that's interesting too. And what I aim to do with this channel is to continue it being a Raptor coverage channel. But what is very important to me is that Raptor fans, we as Toronto Raptor fans, can be very unbiased and educated about the rest of the league. My goal would be that if you're a dedicated listener of this channel, that by the end of this year, you will have a very good working knowledge of the following three things. One, the game of basketball, how it is being played in 2024 to some degree. That may be through X's and O's, that may be through training, that may be through deep dives into scouting practices, etc. That's my first goal. My second goal is that you have a really, really familiar knowledge of the top 200 to 250 players in the NBA. I don't need to tell you about 450, but 200 to 250 we should be aware of. And I am always amazed that when a conversation comes up about AJ Griffin, Dyson Daniels, Ayo Dosunmu, Trey Murphy, guys like this, Herb Jones, especially in Raptorland, that the conversation about those non-Raptors is typically way more evolved than it would be for any other fan base. And you know why that is? Because we have spent so much time talking about those specific players, dissecting their game, dissecting the pros and cons of why they would fit on the Raptors. And through this, we're learning about basketball. We're learning about these other teams and these other players, and I love it. And I'm not one of those, kind of weirdo super fans that are like, everyone on the Raptors is a great basketball player and everyone on the Orlando Magic is a bum. I'm never going to do that. Not with a straight face. Yes, on this list, you're going to see RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley ranked, or at least RJ Barrett is ranked above Desmond Bane. And I don't think either of those players are better than Desmond Bane. And I'll tell you that with a straight face. So that is my goal. And the third thing that I hope that we can learn, so we want the working knowledge of the 250 best players. We want the working knowledge of how the game is played. The third thing I hope that we can learn is how to be better people. And I know that sounds very kumbaya, but this channel has always been about more than basketball. And I really hope that we can continue being about more than basketball. Okay, let's get to the top 100. And let's discuss these players. First of all, Anthony Simons at 100. Interesting. The scoring boost is legit here, but I'm going to assume that they don't have Denny Avdia here, and I think Denny Avdia is a better player. That's me. Jonas Valanciunas at 91 is crazy. So let's talk about these players one by one. Anthony Simons at 100. Last year, he was at 85. I think both marks are very high. Anthony Simons is a hell of a scorer. I think the Raptors could have potentially used him if they had an elevated defense elsewhere. I think there are certain teams that may be able to use this guy because clearly I think Scoot Henderson is the future at the guard position. And, hopefully Scoot turns around his career after a really tough rookie season. But I do think that it is crazy to have a player whose defense is this bad at top 100, but I kind of get it. Chris Paul, yeah, the age factor, right? He wasn't the greatest last year, but I suspect that he'll be very good for the San Antonio Spurs this year. And again, I'm not really mad at this until I see who's ahead. 98, we have Mike Conley. Again, both very older guards. 97, Herb Jones. I don't need to see 96 through 1 to tell you this is crazy. Herb Jones at 97 is mental. Al Horford at 96, I can get with. Jalen Suggs at 95. Why does this list hate defense? Like, you got Herb Jones, Jalen Suggs, Keegan Murray. I'm pretty sure Keon Ellis didn't make this list, nor should he really, but I don't know, man. They're really underrating defense. Jalen Suggs had a huge year last year defensively. I really came around a long way on him. And, career best 39.7% from three. I mean, he's probably one of the top 4 3-and-D guys in the league. And on the one hand, you're going to glaze OG Anunoby, and OG is great, but Jalen Suggs is a really good player. And again, Keegan Murray. I was not sold on Keegan at the draft, but I told my dude Leo, when the Sacramento Kings passed on Jaden Ivey for Keegan Murray, I said he's one of the most error-free basketball players I've ever seen in my life at the collegiate level. And I just think that, he's morphed into the type of defender that I never thought of him being. I really thought Jabari Smith was going to be the defender that Keegan Murray is really turning himself into. And that's not to say Jabari's not turning himself into that quality of defender. I just think, to some extent, Keegan is pretty underrated as a defender. And, he's a sniper from three. And, if he starts dropping 22 points a game, I just think the numbers aren't going to be there. And now they've added DeMar, Malik, there's Domas, there's De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is entering a contract year. So maybe Keegan's numbers take a step back. But I'll tell you, on a worse team, on a less loaded offensive team, Keegan could be a 20-point per game scorer on efficient numbers and a good secondary playmaker, decent-ish, with really just decent positional versatility defensively, and a pretty good defender. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed overall. Brook Lopez from 69 to 93 is I don't know if I can get that high on Brook right now. Speak of the devil, Jabari Smith Jr. I like this. I mean, this is showing some love to a player who's not on the most hyped team right now, but I think the Rockets are going to have a really good year this year. I think Alperen Sengun has been amazing. The idea of Jonas Valanciunas over any of these guys is absolutely crazy to me. Crazy. He played 23 minutes a game last year for the Pelicans. He's currently playing on the Washington Wizards. I mean, ask yourself this question. Is Jonas Valanciunas better than Keegan Murray? No. Suggs? No. Horford? No. Herb Jones? No. Mike Conley? No. Chris Paul? No. Anthony Simons? No. What are we doing here? Like who makes these lists? I'm sorry. JV is fine. JV's perfectly fine. He can shoot a little bit. He's a good rebounder, average shot blocker, maybe. Not a great switch defender. I don't get it. I'm sorry. I can't get with that logic. Number 90, Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins over Herb Jones in this day and age is pretty crazy. It's pretty insane. I got to say that. It's pretty insane. Availability must matter to some extent. However, the theory of Andrew Wiggins is, if he's fine, that's some potential defense and some much needed creation for the Warriors. So I'll be curious to see if he bounces back. Allegedly off-court issues had him, falling out a little bit. Michael Porter Jr. Would I take Michael Porter Jr. over Keegan Murray? No, I wouldn't, because MPJ is not a good defender. And I understand the offensive upside of Michael Porter Jr. I get it, but you put Keegan Murray next to Nikola Jokic, and not only will he not be a pylon defensively, he's probably going to be. I mean, Keegan slept on. I'm sorry, he just slept on. I'm not saying that Michael Porter Jr. is like not a top 100 player, but he'd be like right at 100 for me. Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm happy to see him getting some love here. I think he's a very underrated player. I love what he did with the Knicks last year. Naz Reid, same thing. Playoffs. Wow, Jaime Jaquez at 86. Please help me understand Jaime Jaquez, who I love, by the way, being over Herb Jones. Unless this is a massive projection. Herb Jones, Jalen Suggs, Keegan Murray, Jaime Jaquez? How's Jaime Jaquez better than Keegan Murray? Like, Jaime is good, but 86? Man, this list is tripping me out. Lou Dort over Herb Jones. Why? Oh, I know. We got Lou Dort getting overrated, Andrew Wiggins getting overrated. Maybe the person who wrote this list is Canadian. I don't know. Maybe we'll see Chris Boucher at number 2. Okay, CJ McCollum. Yeah, I get it. Marcus Smart didn't play last year. I'm curious to see how he'll be. Mitchell Robinson. This is insane. First of all, on no planet, on this planet or any other planet, is Mitchell Robinson a better player than Isaiah Hartenstein or Herb Jones or Keegan Murray or Michael Porter Jr. Mitchell Robinson's not a top 100 player in the league right now. I'm sorry. Health has to matter. Skill has to matter. Shooting has to matter. Mitchell Robinson's a great defensive player, really good rim protector, really good rebounder. Doesn't do a hell of a lot else. Sorry, I can't. And I'm going to assume that Jakob Poeltl is not on this list. I would take Jakob Poeltl over Mitchell Robinson any day of the week, 2 times on a Saturday. Miles Turner at 81 and Jeremy Grant at 80. Oof. All right. Splitting hairs between those two. I understand the deficiencies. I'm inclined to say they're probably, I don't know. I personally, if you're telling me you think Jeremy Grant is better than Herb Jones, why is Herb Jones? Like, honestly, here's the problem. Herb Jones is not a bottom 60 player in the league. Like, he's arguably the best defender in the league, and he can shoot the 3. Like, what the hell are we doing here? I understand he has some limitations, but his positional versatility and his ability to guard should be putting him in top 70, and he's pretty healthy, top 65 easily. This is the problem with being a second round pick, is you get underrated forever. And I'm sorry, I cannot understand a world in which Jeremy Grant helps you win more right now than Herb Jones. Although I do think Jeremy Grant is also underrated in his own right, and probably if he was on a better team, he'd be in a better situation, and maybe he's anchoring a team that's pretty bad. But you got to understand, he's probably not the Portland Trailblazers' best player right now. I really do think Denny Avdija is that good because of the defensive gap. But if he's their second best player, he's the second best player on the worst team in the East. Sorry, in the worst team in the West. Make it make sense. Fred VanVleet at 79. I promise not to gloat, but man, do y'all remember Fred VanVleet saying, I'm a top 50 player in the league, and I got that list way shorter? Y'all remember that? Well, ESPN does not agree. Honestly, this is probably low. Okay. I'm going to be really honest about Fred. I would take Fred over Marcus Smart. I'd take Fred over CJ. I'd take Fred over Lou Dort. I would take Fred over Jaime Jaquez, not as an asset, just as a player right now. Also, I think Naz Reid might be underrated here. I would take Naz Reid over a lot of these guys. I definitely would take Naz Reid over. I would take Naz Reid over Mitchell Robinson and Miles Turner. Nas and Miles is close, but Nas can handle the ball a little bit. I would definitely take him over Jeremy Grant. So the bottom of this list is absolutely cooked. I do think Fred is better than most of those players, though. I love that Brandon Pajinski is getting some hype here, and I'm not even that mad at it, to be honest. I think he's just that good. I think this might be presumptive, though. To say Brandon Pajinski is better than Fred VanVleet right now, you better. You're crazy. Jaden McDaniels. Okay. Separate Jaden McDaniels from Herb Jones for me, please. And try to make that argument without saying this guy went to the final, this guy went to the Western Conference Finals, and this guy didn't. Herb Jones better than Jaden McDaniels, man. Like, even if you're saying it's close, it's closer than this. Tyler Hero at 76. I do think Tyler Hero gets underrated a little bit. 76. Yeah, I can get with that. I can get with that. He's a pretty good player. He's a really good playmaker. I think he's really underrated as a playmaker. Good 3-level scorer. I don't know. Dante DiVincenzo. Wow, 75 for Dante DiVincenzo. I like this. I think he tends to get underrated overall, but this is interesting. Speaking of Zach LaVine, would y'all believe that legend of winning, Lowe, shout outs to Lowe, had Zach LaVine as the 25th best player in the NBA on his last rankings? 25th. I don't know where I am on Zach LaVine right now. On the one hand, his teams tend to perform pretty well when he's not playing. On the other hand, he's a really good basketball player. I've talked to people who have very split opinions on him. Some people really just hate his defense, hate his effort defensively, kind of hate the overall idea of him but he's really efficient. He can shoot the basketball. It's great in transition. I think, if you're telling me Zach LaVine on the Toronto Raptors right now, I could really get with that. It's just the defense would fall off a cliff. He makes a ton of money. There's a lot of years. There's injury issues. So I'm sorry, I can't quite get to 74, even though when it comes to talent, he might be top 40. But when it comes to just player in terms of what I want, defensively, durability, money, as an asset, he's not a top 100 asset, I'll tell you that. But maybe as a player, I can get to 74. Jared Allen, a little underrated here, 73. Borderline all-star center. I think 50 was probably closer than 73, but I get it. Austin Reeves at 72 is insane. I wouldn't take Austin Reeves over Jared Allen. I wouldn't take Austin Reeves over Zach LaVine, and neither would the Lakers if they're being honest and the money was the same. I wouldn't take Austin over Dante DiVincenzo, Tyler Hero, Jaden McDaniels. I wouldn't take him over Brandon Pajinski. I wouldn't take him over Fred VanVleet. I wouldn't take him over Miles Turner. I wouldn't take him over Marcus Smart if Marcus Smart is healthy. Big if. I wouldn't take him over Naz Reid. I wouldn't take him over Isaiah Hartenstein. I wouldn't take him over Michael Porter Jr. What the fuck are we doing here? I would not take him over Keegan Murray. I wouldn't take him over Jalen Suggs. I would not take him over Keon Ellis, who's not even on this list. I would not take him over Herb Jones. What are we doing here? I would take him over Anthony Simons, though. I'll give you that. So far, if we're talking about overrated, underrated, he is very overrated. Okay. Klay Thompson at 71. Get the fuck out of here. There's no way Klay Thompson is the 71st best player in the league. He is not even close to this. Everything I just said about Austin Reeves, I would take Herb Jones over Klay Thompson in a heartbeat. Easy. Like, this is nuts. I understand championship pedigree. Please understand, according to Kraft, that he was a 6th percentile defender. He still has a ton of shooting gravity. I'm sorry, he's not helping you win more than Herb Jones. If the Mavericks had Herb Jones, their championship odds would go up. So this list is political. Maybe the person who wrote it is trying to make friends with the players that he's ranking. Maybe he doesn't want to get too much hate, or maybe they want to get a ton of hate. I have no idea. These lists are often meant to be controversial so that people will react to them, I guess. 71 is nuts. 70 Bradley Beal feels a little low, but if you're going to tell me right now that Jalen Green's better than Bradley Beal, that probably means Bradley Beal took a massive step back and Jalen Green took a massive step up. Jalen Green was on a tear to end last season. I fully understand anyone who has him this high on the basis that he's going to be, that 25 point per game scorer type. And maybe if they let him, he will be. He's a real bucket getter. Still can't play a lick of defense, though. And I do think that that matters. He's not super efficient. And I think that that matters, right? So if he's going to be a low efficiency scorer, limited playmaker, and a non-defender, he's an elevated Cam Thomas, right? But the eye test says Jalen Green could pop, and he's 22 years old, and way worse players than him have ascended to the levels that we're talking about. So if you tell me we end the year 69th, yeah, I could see 69th. I could see top 50, but it seems like what I've seen so far does not make me think that he would be that player. Brandon Miller ahead of him makes a lot of sense, but Brandon Miller ahead of most of these players makes sense. I was very encouraged with what I saw from him last year. I wasn't super high on Brandon Miller. All y'all remember at the draft, I really wasn't that high on him, but Brandon Miller really made a believer out of me last year. I watched a few games of him and I was very impressed. Cade Cunningham at 67. So I've had a lot of beef with Cade, partially because, Detroit fans and NBA fans in general have just been trying to tell me that he's better than Scottie for like 4 straight years. And I've been trying to scream at the top of my lungs that he's not. Now that we've cleared those conversations and hardly anyone I've ever heard is kind of make that point, I can see Cade in a little bit more of a different light. And I'm not such a Cade hater. Cade has a lot of advantages. And it's interesting that a couple of days ago, I was talking about it either on the panel or on one of these lives where I was comparing Cade to DeMar DeRozan. And what's very interesting is that I was listening to a Thinking Basketball podcast yesterday, and they legit compared Cade to DeMar DeRozan. And I really like that comparison. Partially, I do think that Cade has the potential to be a better shooter than DeMar. He's already a better creator than DeMar was at the same age. If he can figure out the craft and angles that DeMar uses to score, and if he can start being a better defender, he can have a better career than DeMar DeRozan. That's the very optimistic side of it. The negative side of it is he doesn't finish super well at the rim. Maybe the mid-range shooting wasn't super real last year. He still has a lot of high turnover rate. Not the greatest passer. I know people like to call him a great passer because he throws a couple of nice dimes, but man, taking care of the basketball has been a really big thing, with him. I do think the Pistons are much better with him on the court than they have been off. The mid-range potential could be real. And, injuries have derailed the first 3 years. So I'm not going to be a Cade hater and then say 67 is crazy. There's a chance he ends up 50, 52 by the end of the year. That's certainly possible. Draymond Green at 66. I don't know. I can get with this, but it feels like it depends on which Draymond Green you're talking about. Draymond Green fully motivated is much better than 66. Draymond Green, on a losing team, punching dudes and maybe half checked out, and that could be a top 50 player for sure. Malik Monk. I love that Malik is getting this respect, this level of respect. I haven't seen DeMar DeRozan on this list. I have a feeling I'm going to see him at some point, maybe, because I certainly would think DeMar is a top 100 guy for ESPN. But I love that Malik's getting this kind of love. He was 6th man last year, probably would have won 6th man of the year if he hadn't gotten injured down the stretch. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a total non-defender. I will say that. But as an electric athlete, transition athlete, not to mention a half-court playmaker, scorer, bucket getter, off the bench, like he's absolutely incredible. And the Sacramento Kings could be a top 6 seed. They could also be in the play-in. We'll see where they end up. But I like Malik at 65. Emmanuel Quickley at 64. Now, the only issue I have with this is some of the players ahead of him I don't agree with, but Emmanuel Quickley being the 64th best player in the league feels somewhat fair. Like, I could get as high as 50 if things work out really well. And if he continues to struggle defensively, I can get as low as 70 on Emmanuel Quickley. So somewhere in there makes sense. Chris Middleton. From 46 to 63, the drop off is real. Injuries, efficiency dips, right? How much can you really trust a 33-year-old going forward? This is right around the age when a lot of secondary, tertiary stars have progressed into kind of role players, but he's still very talented. He was still the shot closer for an NBA champion a few years ago. So I could certainly see a world in which he satisfies 63rd best player. This feels kind of fair. KCP at 62 feels a little overrated. I'm not going to lie. I like KCP. I like what he does, but help me understand KCP over Herb Jones. Help me understand KCP over Emmanuel Quickly. Help me understand KCP over Malik Monk. I could see that, but KCP over Draymond, a motivated Draymond doesn't make sense to me. KCP over Cade is very dicey. KCP over who I think Brandon Miller will be this year feels wrong. KCP over Jared Allen feels insane. Do they think about this? I think Jared Allen's better. I think I would rather have Dante DiVincenzo than KCP, and Dante's no slouch on defense either. So I think KCP gets massively overrated on this list, but power to you, as you will. Josh Hart at 61 feels fair. Desmond Bane at 60 is insane. Have your head checked. Give it a nice little shake. He's not the 60th best player. There's no world in which Desmond Bane is not a top 50 player in the NBA. He's a great player. 10.8 threes per 100 possessions on 41% from three on his career. He would be a dream godsend for most teams as a second option. He could even carry some teams as a first option. He's carried some units without Ja, without Jaren Jackson, and has been very good at it. He is just one of those players that, again, late draft pick, not a super hype prospect, gets underrated. What he does in the basketball court is incredible. He's an underrated playmaker. I think, there was a debate we had on the panel the other day, Jalen Williams versus Desmond Bane. And we came to the conclusion that Desmond Bane's a better shooter. Jalen Williams is a better finisher around the rim. It's tomato between those two. I give the edge to Jalen because Jalen's 23 and Desmond's like 25 going on 26. So maybe you give the edge to the bigger athlete with the longer wingspan and the younger guy on the better team. But Desmond Bane is really, really good. And SP saying Bane is a student of Darko. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And he's a very, very good player. Number 59, Alex Caruso. I love Alex Caruso. I'm not going to get mad at this. Alex is really good. Kobe White at 58 feels really wrong. And I'll tell you why it feels wrong. It's not because Kobe White's not a good player. It's just because of some of the players that you put behind him feel so weird to me. I know he went off, but Kobe White ahead of Desmond Bane? Kobe White ahead of Emmanuel? I can't. Emmanuel Quickly and Kobe White are in the same conversation. You can get me on that, but over Draymond Green, Cade Cunningham, I can't completely get with Kobe White being this high. Darius Garland 57 from 36. Again, a logical progression based on the season he had. He probably should be 65. Based on the potential he possesses, should probably be 40. So 57 feels like it's splitting the difference. People really sleeping on Darius Garland. Super talented. 56. This is the one that had people very upset, which is Derek Lively at 56. People were very upset about this. And you know what? I'm probably one of the biggest Derek Lively fans in the world. Y'all saw my playoff coverage of the Dallas Mavericks. And, when the Dallas Mavericks win the playoffs, one player that I just kept going on and on and on about was Derek Lively. If this is projecting into this year and you tell me we end the year and Derek Lively is a top 60 player, I'll believe you. So I'm the least mad person in the world at Derek Lively 56. But Derek Lively over Desmond Bane feels completely stupid right now. Over Josh Hart kind of feels crazy, but I can get there. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'd feel more comfortable with him at 62 or 63, but that's really splitting hairs at this point. 55, Jaren Jackson Jr. If you think there are 54 players in the world better than Jaren Jackson Jr., you're mental. And if you think there are 53 players in the world better than Alperen Şengün, you might be even more mental. Alperen Şengün, I really gave Alpi like legit consideration for All NBA today over Domantas Sabonis. I think Alperen Şengün is so freaking good at basketball. Now, I understand defensively there are some concerns. He's not the greatest rim protector, but what he does as a scorer, what he can do on the block, what he does as a playmaker is just so impressive. So impressive. The idea that you have 53 players over Alperen Şengün is so stupid. I can't pick between which of these players. It's crazy. Now, 53, RJ Barrett. Whether RJ Barrett is a top 55 player in the NBA or not is not the question. The question is, would any GM, if given the option, pick RJ Barrett over Alperen Şengün? No. Jaren Jackson Jr.? No. If they do, they should be fired. Would they pick him over Derek Lively? Probably not. Would they pick him over Darius Garland? Probably not. Would they pick him over Desmond Bane? Hell the fuck no. If the Raptors could trade RJ Barrett for Desmond Bane right now, they would probably attach a first round pick to get that deal done. This is not disrespect to RJ Barrett. There's a reason that most people think Emmanuel Quickley is a better player than RJ Barrett. Now, is there a world in which RJ Barrett does end the season as a top 53 player? Yes. Yes, there is. Yes, there is, actually. If his defensive stability goes up a little bit, if he can become just he doesn't have to be like a stopper. He doesn't have to be Herb Jones. He has a lot of gifts offensively. I saw great progression shooting wise. I saw great progression as a playmaker. And that makes him a very rare archetype. Very rare. So here's the question. If RJ Barrett really is the 53rd best player, then what is stopping the Raptors from being a playoff team? Because right here at 52, you have Franz Wagner, and he is allegedly the second best player in Orlando. So if the second best player in Orlando is the 52nd best player, and the second best player in Toronto is the 53rd best player, then unless, of course, you have Paolo 15 spots higher than, think about it. Like, what's the difference between the Magic and the Raptors? You're telling me KCP is the only difference between the Magic and the Raptors? Also, I did not see Jonathan Isaac on this list, and that makes me very mad because there's no way in the world that you can tell me there are 99 players in the league, 100 players in the league better than Jonathan Isaac. I don't give a shit that he's 101. He's hitting threes now. If you think Jonathan Isaac is not a top 100 player, you need to have you checked. Wait till you see where Paolo is. Ha ha ha. I'm assuming it's going to be like top 20, right? And I'm going to lose my mind. Don't worry. We'll get to that when we get to that. Franz Wagner is a very good player. I would take him over OG Anunoby. Is that crazy to say? OG is one of my favorite players. I think Franz is just that good. And he just signed a $224 million contract that has everyone scratching their head. OG, of course, signed a really huge contract. Here's the question for you guys. You have 51, 52 have signed $224 million deals each, right? And we were told less than 8 months ago, that RJ Barrett at $27 million was a toxic asset. So who's lying and who's telling the truth? I don't know. OG Anunoby is the 51st best player in the league. Makes sense to me. Franz Wagner at 52nd probably doesn't. I would probably put Franz Wagner inside the top 45. And that's just because I really value his defense and I think he's going to get better. And I think a lot of people maybe who didn't watch Magic games had some idea that Franz Wagner is just some guy who shoots 1 for 15 in a tough game. Is Paolo a big man version of DeMar? That's a really, really apt way of looking at it. Yeah, he is. But he's somehow less efficient as well. Okay, getting on to... Oh, no. Hang on. Give me 1 second here. So ESPN top 100. Give me 1 sec here, guys. ESPN top 100 NBA. And I got to get the ratings for players. Oh shit, 10-1 just dropped as well. That's cool. Okay, no, that's from last year. Hang on. So where the hell are we here? What's going on? $50-11. Oh, here we go. No, that's last year's. Hang on. Where the hell are we going here? I can't see it. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but I'm not seeing it. Give me 1 sec here. Oh, got it. There we go. Okay. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Here we go. Here's 50-11. React to this as well. Okay. So this is what the hell? Okay, 50-11. Here we go. All right, 50 LaMelo Ball. Yeah, I can see that. Aaron Gordon over LaMelo Ball though. Aaron Gordon over LaMelo Ball. Aaron Gordon over Alperen Şengün. Yo, I love Aaron Gordon, but that's wild to me. Aaron Gordon over Franz Wagner. No, I can't buy that shit. No way. Julius Randle at 48. I get it, I guess. 47th, Evan Mobley. I expect Mobley to have a huge year this year. I don't understand how the hell he fell from 40 to 47. He had a tough year last year, but I think he's gonna have a bounce back year. And 47 is probably I would buy the stock right now. Kristaps Porzingis at 46. I get it. DeMar DeRozan at 45. I do not get it. There's no way in hell that I would take DeMar over Evan Mobley, and nor would anybody else. Can we please be honest about that? DeMar DeRozan is not a better player right now than Kristaps Porzingis. He's not a better player than Evan Mobley. He's not a better player than I don't think he's a better player than LaMelo Ball. Like I can get with you on the injuries. I like DeMar, but the efficiency factor here has to matter. The defensive factor has to matter. Is this the top scorers? Like I don't get this. Like you're telling me that there's any GM in the world right now that wants to win basketball games and wants to be competitive that is taking DeMar DeRozan over Jaren Jackson Jr.? Try to make that call to make that trade. Like, get out of here. DeMar DeRozan over Desmond Bane? What are we doing here? Jesus, it's crazy. DeMar over Desmond Bane. Like, DeMar over RJ Barrett would feel kind of like, tomato, right? RJ's younger. I'd rather have RJ, but like, that's crazy. That's really crazy. Jalen Williams at 44 feels low. Jalen Williams under DeJounte Murray is wrong. It's just wrong. Jalen Williams under Pascal Siakam feels wrong. Jalen Williams under James Harden I can get. Brandon, wow. Okay, so Brandon Ingram is ahead of, let's figure this out. Brandon Ingram is ahead of Pascal Siakam. Tell me what he does better. Like barely, man. It's you're splitting hairs. But there's no way that Brandon Ingram's a better player than Jalen Williams, especially this year. He's better than Kristaps Porzingis, better than Evan Mobley. Brandon Ingram is being overrated by this list. I think he's like 47th, 48th, but I wouldn't take Brandon Ingram over Franz Wagner. I just wouldn't. I like Derek White getting some love here. I could buy this, but who would I rather have, Derek White or Mikal Bridges? I could see splitting hairs over that. Trae Young, 37. That feels right, but it also feels so wrong. I mean, there's so many talented players in this league. I get it. I'll understand that. Drew Holiday at 36. You know, I said today on the panel that I thought Drew was the Celtics' second best player, and a lot of people pushed back on that because they felt Jaylen Brown's much better. I don't. Scottie Barnes moves from 63rd to 35th. Am I mad at him being 35th? I mean, I should be since I have him at 14, but I'm not mad at this. That's perfectly fine. Would I take Scottie over Lauri Markkanen? Hell yes, I would. What the hell has Lauri Markkanen done to warrant this? He's fallen from 28 to 33. I understand he's a very good player. I've said many times I would love to pair Scottie with Lauri Markkanen. Please understand, if I ever pair Scottie and Lauri Markkanen, I'm very clear on who the number one option is there. Jeez. Okay. Rudy Gobert at 34. I don't know. I'll take Scottie over both these guys. I would also take Scottie over Chet, but I understand the chat. 31, Jamal Murray. Okay. Please understand me when I say this. Jamal Murray is not top 50 for me. It's just not even close. Just get out of here with this. That's just wrong. Karl Towns at 30 feels right. DeMontis Sabonis 29, too low. Jimmy Butler 28 feels weird, really. Zion at 27, De'Aaron Fox at 26, Kyrie at 25. I mean, who would I rather have, De'Aaron Fox or Kyrie Irving? That feels like a discussion I can get into. Would I rather have any of those guys over Jimmy Butler, though? I guess it depends. As an asset, hell yes. But as a player right now, Jimmy feels like a top 20 player, man. He really does. Like, unless he fell off way big time, going from 12 to 28 is nasty work. All right. Paolo Banchero, 24th. Okay. I wouldn't take Paolo over Kyrie if my goal was trying to win. I wouldn't take him over De'Aaron Fox. I wouldn't take him over Zion if my goal was trying to win and Zion was healthy. I wouldn't take him over Jimmy Butler. I wouldn't take him over Domas. I wouldn't take him over. Would I take him over Cat? No, I wouldn't. I would take him over Jamal Murray. I'll give you that. I would never take him over Chet Holmgren. I wouldn't take him over Laurie Marketing. Again, if my goal was simply winning and defense matters, I wouldn't take him over Rudy Gobert. I definitely wouldn't take him over Scotty Barnes. I wouldn't take him over Drew Holiday. I wouldn't take him over Trae Young. I'm not hating on Paolo by telling you he's not a top 30 player in the NBA. Y'all really, really want this to be true, but it's just not true. I would barely take him over Franz, and honestly, that's splitting hairs. Damian Lillard at 23, fine. Fall from 14 to 23. I think he's in for a resurgent season. Kawhi going from 24 to 22 is great. I mean, he played a pretty healthy year last year, and I wonder how he'll do this year. Paul George over Kawhi Leonard is possibly the biggest rage bait, clickbait bullshit I think I've ever seen. Paul George is not a better player than Kawhi Leonard. Paul George is definitely, but I mean, okay. So what are we saying here? By putting Paul George at 21, are we saying the Sixers have 3 top 21 players? Wow. That might be one of the best big threes ever assembled. All right, John Morant at 20. I can get with that. Tyrese Maxey. I love that Tyrese Maxey's been placed this high. I have to say, though, if both are healthy and both are right, I'm having a very difficult time understanding Tyrese Maxey over John Morant. Although I'm very high on John Morant. Sorry, I'm very high on Tyrese Maxey. So I like that he's getting love, and I'm not gonna rain on the parade here. Bam Adebayo, I get it. I get him being this high. I think he's fringy top 20. I think when I did my list, I had him at 20th. So getting mad at 18th would be weird. Donovan Mitchell, I'm pretty sure I had Donovan Mitchell at 17. Tyrese Halliburton, yeah, he's in that range. If I'm not mistaken, this is exactly my rating. Jaylen Brown at 14. Okay, let's get on this. I wouldn't take Jaylen Brown over Devin Booker. I wouldn't take him over Tyrese Halliburton. I wouldn't take him over Donovan Mitchell. I wouldn't take him over Bam. I wouldn't take him over Tyrese Maxey, John Morant, Paul George. I wouldn't take him over Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard. I would take him over Paolo Banchero. I wouldn't take him over Kyrie. I would not take him over De'Aaron Fox. I wouldn't take him over Zion Williamson. I wouldn't take him over Jimmy Butler. Are you mental? I wouldn't take him over Domas. Would I take him over Karl-Anthony Towns? Maybe. I would take him over Jamal Murray. I would not take him over Chet. I wouldn't take him over Laurie. I wouldn't take him over Rudy, Scotty, Drew, Trey. I might take him over Mikal Bridges. I would take him over Derek White. I would take him over Brandon Ingram. I'm not sure I'd take him over James Harden. I would not take him over Pascal. This is where I would put him. Right here. I would put him between DeJounte Murray and James Harden. He should be 42 on this list instead of Pascal Siakam. And maybe Pascal moves down to 44 or something like that. That's just criminally overrated. And I don't agree with it. And I really don't care. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with this. Number 13, Anthony Davis. Number 12, Jalen Brunson. If you think Jalen Brunson's a better player than Anthony Davis, you might be a Knicks fan. That's just not true. And look, here's the thing. I didn't put Jalen Brunson on my top 20. People were mad about it. I don't really care. Devin Booker is a better player than Jalen Brunson. Cap or no cap. Come on, man. Like, we get... Are you telling me right now, the Knicks, if they had their way a year ago, they wouldn't have preferred to build this whole shit around Donovan Mitchell? But now I got to pretend that Jalen Brunson is God's gift to earth and Donovan Mitchell is chopped liver because Jalen Brunson had a hot playoff run. Why do we always do this? Like, why are we forgetting? Like, Anthony Davis is really good. It's way better than Jalen Brunson. And Victor Wembanyama at 11. I love it. I had him higher, but whatever. I don't know. Kunmi or Riyadh saying, I think you hate Jaylen Brown a bit too much. You are wrong, my friend. I have actually spent a great deal of time supporting Jaylen Brown, supporting the hell out of Jaylen Brown. I love the fact that he plays chess. I love the fact that he's outspoken socially. I love the fact that he's super smart. I love his activism in general. Like I love the fact that he's so successful. I cannot tell you with a straight face that he's a top 40 player in the NBA. And frankly, if you watch basketball, go watch yesterday. Ochai cuts back door. He misses it. He's trying to back down Ochai. Grady just slips into his blind spot, picks the ball away. He's trying to dribble, does one crossover, and a rookie like Jonathan Mobo just picks him clean. It was time and time again. Scottie bumps him off the block to end the second quarter. What happened? He flew back 4 feet. Jaylen Brown is so overrated. It is ridiculous. He's a perfectly good basketball player. He's not on the level of James Harden. He's not on the level of these high level creators. And the fact that he plays in so much spacing and the type of spacing that is being created by guys like Jason Tatum, like Jason Tatum is so much better than Jaylen Brown. It's really stupid that there's a conversation between these two. There's no conversation at all. JB is worse at everything other than slashing. Literally everything. It's nuts that this is a narrative that exists in the world. It's not right. But I'm not against Jaylen Brown. I just don't like players getting overrated. When people were telling me Pascal Siakam's a top 10 player, I was very upset because it felt very wrong. And maybe being upset about basketball things is stupid and shows a lack of maturity on my part. But I don't like when people just kind of say things over and over and make them true. You know what I mean? Like, y'all remember way back when we were trying to hype ourselves into believing that Chris Bosh was an MVP candidate, and Vince Carter came with the New Jersey Nets, and he looked around at the fans chanting MVP, MVP, and just kind of said, MVP, are you kidding me? And then the media kind of roasted him for that, and they were just like, oh, Vince is hating on Chris Bosh. Well, who was right? You won 3 playoff games in 7 years with Chris Bosh. Was he wrong or was he right? Basketball is not that complicated. It's very complicated, but it's not that complicated. It's a bit of a, catch-22 conundrum or whatever, if you will. There's things you need as a guard to be successful in the NBA. There's things you need as a primary initiator. There's things you need as a primary stopper. And I'm sorry, Jaylen Brown ain't it. He's very athletic, does not see the game, does not map the game defensively or offensively, gets lost off the ball all the time. He's not a good enough shooter for me to put him over guys like Desmond Bane. Is not a good enough creator for me to put him over, guys like James Harden. Is not a good enough defender to put me to. I think with him and Franz Wagner is a real debate. And you tell me right now that the Celtics traded Jaylen Brown for Franz Wagner, I'd say great. They're going to win another championship. It doesn't matter. If you swapped, and I'm not saying he's worse than him, but if you swapped last year a healthy Zach LaVine for Jaylen Brown last year in the playoffs with the space that the Celtics create and the offense that they run, they're not worse. I mean, they're marginally worse. They're just like marginally worse. And today on the panel, we were discussing Jaylen Brown for the first 30 minutes. Well, from minute 11 till about minute 40 is all Jaylen Brown. So if you're deeply curious, certainly go check that out and comment on that video as well. But one of the things that Mars brought up, and shout outs to Mars Talk Sports, and one of the things that he brought up was the reason that Jaylen Brown gets so much primacy as an on-ball defender is because he's so terrible off the ball and his teammates are so good off the ball. And people were like, well, the fact that he's on the ball must mean that he's the best defender. If you're putting him on the other team's best player, it must mean that he's so good. And that's just not the case. They're putting him on the ball because their scheme works best with him being the primary. But the only reason it works so well is because the secondary and tertiary defenders are so great. They're elevating him. Defense works on a string. I've brought this up 1,000 times. Just because you have the primary assignment does not mean you're the most important or even the best defender. And frankly, they would love to use him as an off-ball defender if he could even do it, but he can't. And that's the problem. He gets lost. He gets picked backdoor. He doesn't fight over screens very well. So the problem is he fights over screens reasonably. It's just this off-ball awareness is kind of lacking. It's the same stuff we're talking about with Davion Mitchell, except he doesn't quite apply the pressure or attention to detail or, just the force that Davion applies offensively as well. He's not a top 4 defender on the Celtics at all. So, if you can make a case that the offense is very valuable, I get it, but I don't see it. Yeah. I think Pascal and Jaylen are the tails of the same player, but one was properly casted as the secondary tertiary option. I get it. Yeah, and you know what Jaylen Brown reminds me of? Jaylen Brown reminds me of Cade Cunningham. He reminds me of DeMar DeRozan, early on in his career. Guys who don't quite have the court mapping and brilliant playmaking chops of a Tyrese Halliburton. They don't have the verve and the speed of a Tyrese Maxey or an early stage Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady. They don't have exactly the size, and they don't necessarily have the scoring proficiency or volume of a Kawhi Leonard or Michael Jordan, right? But they operate as like a 60% version of that. You know what I mean? Like if you squint your eyes for one quarter, you can really sell yourself on DeMar DeRozan being almost as good as Kobe Bryant. But trust me, he's not. He's not even close. In fact, DeMar DeRozan was a really deep subject of Thinking Basketball's last podcast. If you want to understand basketball really deep in terms of how they see it, I think you should check that out. It was a great listen talking about the numbers with DeMar versus Kyle. And, DeMar was obviously the guy who got, he was sacrificed for the Raptors championship, but there's a reason he was sacrificed. And, partially it was because, the Spurs wanted to replace Kawhi with another bucket getter and a scorer, but also it was because, that was the guy who had to go out in order for the whole thing to work. And the numbers show that DeMar DeRozan was a notorious playoff disappearing act, that he shot 50% true shooting, which is very bad and very below league average for 51 playoff games with the Raptors, that the Raptors in every single year of his prime were better when he was on the bench. It showed that he was a tough shot maker. And there's another logic to tough shot makers as being very useful because, when your offense breaks down, you need someone to bail you out. That's a very important skill. It's a very important skill. There's a limit to the skill, and there's a measure for how good you are at the skill to begin with, right? Just because you have a Bones Highland or a Lou Williams or a Cam Thomas or some elevated version or even a repressed version of a Jerry Stackhouse doesn't mean that that player can ever be the most important player on a championship team. And unfortunately, with the salary cap the way it is, paying $60 million, $55 million for Jaylen Brown is a crappy waste of money. And I'm telling you right now, Finals MVP, no Finals MVP. There aren't a lot of people that see Jaylen Brown as being worth his contract right now. I don't care what ESPN says. GMs think differently than media people. And I don't think if they started dangling Jaylen Brown, that teams are like, oh, yeah, that's a guy who's totally worth 40% of my cap sheet. Hell no. He's not as good as people want to make him out to be. And you know what? Just like with the Pascal Siakam thing, just like with the Cade Cunningham thing, just like with the DeMar DeRozan thing, I'll be there to tell you a year, 2 years from now, I told you so, right? So, anyways, nice to do this. Very cool. Thank you to those of you who chimed in. Thank you very much to our to Realist123 for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And please do hit like on this video on your way out. I would really appreciate it. And if you want to hear deeper thoughts on what we thought of the first, of the 35 guys, please feel free to go check out the panel. I will not be on for the rest of this week, but I'm sure at some point next week or the week after I'll be on again. So yeah. Can't wait till we smoke the Nets this season. Oh, there's two final things. Number one, Emmanuel quickly is probably going to be back for Friday. So that's good. Also, the final thing that I was supposed to talk about, which is the final roster spot. I don't care what you do with the final roster spot, just not Bruno Fernando. So if it is, in fact, Jameson Battle, I'll be perfectly fine with it. I think Jameson Battle has some sneaky potential to become something a little bit more. He's young enough right now that I can still buy in on upside. Obviously, DJ Carton, Brandon Carlson, and Uru Shamshay are taking up two-way spots. Jameson Battle is currently on Exhibit 10, which pretty much makes him a lock for the 905. 905 are going to be hella fun to watch this year. I wouldn't mind him getting a proper contract and just giving, a shooter a chance, because every single time, right? If you swapped AK-47 with Jaylen Brown, he'd be a better second option. AK-47 as an Andre Kirilenko? That is very strange because I've never thought of Andre Kirilenko as a second option. But nevertheless, you know who's a really underrated Raptor all time that I think more people need to pay attention to? And if analytics were a bigger thing when he was playing. Okay, here's a pop quiz for not a pop quiz, but like more of a poll for the chat. Name me a player in Raptors history that you think if analytics were a bigger deal during their age, they would have been more celebrated. Is there anyone that you can think of that might be true? And I'm very curious to see what you think. Now, I and if you're watching this video after the live has gone off, please respond in the comments and let me know what you think. Slitherman says Jose Calderon. That's a really interesting observation. I'm not really sure that would. Rue saying Mo Peterson. Interesting. Jose. There's a lot of Jose. That's interesting. That's not who I was thinking of. Garbajosa. Very interesting. Again, not who I had in mind. Doug Christie's probably one. This is the first one that I completely agree with. Yeah, Doug Christie had a very efficient game, very, all factor, but there's another guy that I'm thinking of, and I was thinking of him precisely because people brought up Andre Karolinko. So that's your hint. Utah Jazz is your hint. Okay. So yeah, overall, I would be perfectly fine with the Raptors, going with Jamison Battle for that final spot. I'd be perfectly fine with it. Chris Humphreys. Hell, I don't think so. No. Maybe PER would be the only analytic that would support him. Drazen Petrovic. Well, Drazen Petrovic would be fine, but he's not an ex-Raptor. And Drazen would be... I wonder, how was Drazen... There you go. That's the answer. That's the answer I was looking for. Danielle Marshall. Danielle Marshall, the analytics on him were absolutely insane. I don't think y'all know this, but he led the Raptors in win shares one year. In fairness, so did Chris Boucher. So maybe that pokes a hole in the win shares argument. But Daniel was legit. Like, he was above 3 box plus minus. I mean, he has some incredible analytics. He's so good at shooting, such a good rebounder. You think to yourself right now, could you imagine what this team would look like with a prime Danielle Marshall playing the 4? Oh, man. He's so good, man. So good. That's exactly the player you would want. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in, and I will catch y'all next time. And I don't know if we're going to do a live tomorrow, but we will definitely do one on Friday for the game. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate it.